Chapter 586. After seeing the words "Deliver a Man," Lu Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought, the one who cheats others will be cheated sooner or later. Back then, he was still proud of the fact that there were many imitators of the Deliverer Man, and that he had successfully cleared himself of suspicion. But in the end, such a huge scapegoat fell from the sky. Damn it. Luckily, everyone knows about my damage potential due to my serious injuries. No one will believe that I can suddenly become a terror grade, which is the equivalent of a physical invulnerability mighty one. I won't take the blame. Lu Qing heaved a long sigh of relief. He turned to seriously pondering the matter. The more he thought about it, the more puzzled he felt. Strange, he muttered, frowning. There were two strange points. First, the greatest value of the Holy Grail was that it was stained with a little of the Savior's blood. It was of great symbolic significance and enlightenment to the various branches of the mission sect. For practitioners of other systems, such as martial artists, it could at most be used as a reference to draw parallels. It was an item that was worth losing. As for the research institutions of major countries, they had no lack of similar items rooted in their own country. There was no need for them to get the Holy Grail. Second, the attacker chose to attack at a relatively busy time in the morning. This was indeed the time when the security system was most likely to be negligent. But it was also not a good time for them. It was too eye-catching and obvious. They couldn't kill people calmly, remove the surveillance, erase the traces, and eliminate the influence. They would definitely leave behind many clues. With so many physical invulnerability mighty ones in Connecticut, and many with amazing means, they would be in great danger if they couldn't leave the area immediately. And it wasn't easy to escape from Connecticut immediately. No matter how fast a physical invulnerability mighty one could run, they couldn't outrun the speed of radio transmission. In broad daylight, the Connecticut government wouldn't be slow to respond. As long as they mobilized their so-called terror-grade mighty ones to cooperate with the police and the National Guard to seal off the main entrances and exits, check the strength of the passers-by, one by one, and prevent them from taking advantage of the situation. In addition, with satellites and other high-tech equipment monitoring the farmland, lakes, rivers, and other sparsely populated areas, it would be very difficult for them to leave the country without any means of control. In other words, this was a matter that risked many times more than the benefits. That was why the Brutal delegation dared to have the real Holy Grail on tour in America. Another purpose? Lu Qing shook his head slightly. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. The Holy Grail had been in Brutal's possession for hundreds of years, but they had not produced any valuable results. Who would be willing to take the risk for an illusory hope? Since he couldn't figure it out, he couldn't be bothered to think about it. In any case, it had nothing to do with him. Lu Qing lit up the dim screen of his phone and shared the entire story with his little fairy girl, who was still in class. He also informed the military liaison personnel. Incidents involving physical invulnerability experts were worthy of the attention of the country. At this moment, Connecticut had entered the highest state of alert. All departing flights at Orion Airport were postponed, and all departing passengers were rechecked to confirm their strength. On the bridge across the river, police had set up checkpoints to prevent cars from passing by. Below, warships patrolled back and forth, scanning the water with sonar and other devices. On the other side of the river, a white-haired old man with arms thicker than the legs of others was sitting in the back of a nanny van. He was resting with his eyes closed in case of an emergency. He was none other than the Grand Elder of the Jaruga sect, Stefan. The sparkling lake swayed. Ships from the naval base spread out, using all kinds of high-tech equipment to complete the blockade. On the deck of their flagship, a brown-haired middle-aged man in a general's uniform crossed his arms and looked coldly in the direction of Connecticut. The ripples around him stopped, sparkling. Satellites outside the atmosphere were closely monitoring the places where the city was connected to the farms, the wilderness, and so on. Once a person appeared, they would immediately report and track him. Other than that, there were other arrangements. Because of the existence of powerful humans, the development of technology had always been in the direction of restricting them. In the church museum with broken windows and a dome that exposed the sky, Archbishop Kontsev, who was obviously of Latin descent, stood in front of a warped display case. He sighed. The Lord often teaches us not to overlook today's misfortune because of yesterday's good fortune. We have been careless because nothing has happened before. Yes. Another crown-level strongman from the Brutale delegation, Townsend, drew a cross in front of his chest in sincere repentance. Normally, when the Archbishop was confessing, he should have been with Mason Walker. But after so many days of smooth sailing, everyone felt that everything was normal and that there would be no accidents, so he was lazy. O'Block stood quietly by the side, waiting for the notification from the Connecticut Command Center. At this moment, he felt something and turned his head to look at the entrance of Exhibition Hall Number 1. He saw 3 men in black robes slowly approaching. The leader was tall, with indiscernible wrinkles on his forehead, eyes and cheeks. His hair and eyes were pale white. O'Block glanced at him and felt that he was very close, very noble, and very trustworthy. On the left side of the old man was a man with emerald eyes and an illusory aura. He had a scholarly air about him. He was the light mentor of the spiritualist order, Lucas. Could that be the world-famous Grand Mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco? After making eye contact with Kantsev, the old man smiled and said, "I'm here to meet the spirit of this place." There was no ripple in Kantsev's eyes. He humbly drew a cross and said, "May the Lord bless you." "What a vicious curse," said the old man with a smile. "Wherever they go, they leave traces. I believe that the 3 attackers will be caught. This is a challenge to the order of society. This is a challenge to the stability of America and Connecticut. The Holy Grail contains the blood of the Savior. It is closely related to us." Kantsev looked deeply into his eyes and said calmly, "It can be fooled for a while, but it won't be fooled forever. 2 days at most. Cisco, I hope this will help you." The Grand Mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco nodded slightly and said no more. He focused on channeling to track down the culprits. In the bedroom on the 2nd floor, Yenjika, who was studying for her final exams, looked up and discussed the Holy Grail incident with Lu Chung, who was leisurely playing with his phone. At the end of the conversation, she gently thumped the table and sighed. "What a pity. I haven't even seen what the Holy Grail looks like." Due to their beliefs, the Holy Grail couldn't be photographed during the exhibition. They couldn't view it online, unless they went to see it live. "It looks very ordinary." Lu Ching excitedly took a pen and paper and drew for Yenjika. After a few strokes, he handed it to her as if he was presenting a treasure. "That's it." Yenjika glanced at it and immediately pursed her pink lips to prevent herself from laughing out loud. After holding it in for a dozen seconds, she nodded solemnly. "Chung, your drawing skills. Your calligraphy is better than your drawing." "My calligraphy is bad enough." Lu Ching shook his head in amusement. "I don't accept such compliments." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a throbbing sensation. He stood up with a thoughtful expression. "What's wrong?" Yenjika blinked her clear eyes. "We have guests," replied Lu Chung with a smile as he slowly walked to the door. After a few steps, he turned back and said to the girl, "Let's go down together. It's safer to be close to each other in case any accidents happen." "Okay." Yenjika nodded obediently and reached out to hold Lu Cheng's left hand. When the couple reached the 1st floor, the girl and Aunt Du sat on the sofa in the living room while Lu Cheng walked to the door and pulled it open. The door creaked open. O'Block, who was about to press the doorbell, froze. "Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with?" Lu Cheng already knew what was going on. Beside O'Block, the white-haired, blue-eyed grand teacher looked over with a smile and spoke warmly. "Just a routine investigation." In that instant, Lu Cheng felt an incomparable closeness and respect for the grand teacher. He wanted nothing more than to prostrate himself on the ground and confess his thoughts and repent of his past mistakes. With a change of thought, he outlined the confrontation formula and calmed his body and mind, dispelling the emotions that weren't considered negative. "If only I knew," replied Lu Cheng with a smile. His gaze was calm and his expression was leisurely. To the grand teacher, he was like an ordinary auntie in the neighborhood committee, completely unaffected. O'Block was taken aback. Cisco asked calmly, "You've been going to the Holy Top Church a lot recently." "Why?" "To find ways to calm my mind," answered Lu Cheng truthfully. Lu Qing answered half truthfully and half jokingly. He then casually explained, "You should know that I've suffered a lot of serious setbacks this year." He was indeed looking for ways to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Once he reached the physical invulnerability stage, his mind would undoubtedly find peace. Yeah, that's right. Lu Qing wasn't disappointed or pessimistic. When he talked about the terrifying setbacks that had almost forced him out of the professional circle, he spoke as if he was an observer. Not only was O'Block surprised, but even the Grand Teacher's eyes flickered. In this aspect, us spirit practitioners might be more useful than churches, said Cisco casually. So, why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail today? Cisco asked casually before asking. Why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail? Out of curiosity. For reference. I was supposed to go with my girlfriend on the weekend, but I happened to be free in the morning, so I decided to take a look in advance to prepare for our date, said Lu Qing frankly. The Grand Teacher paused for a few seconds. His eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "You left suddenly before the attack. Did you know something beforehand?" Lu Qing smiled with a heart as cold as ice. According to my data, I have 3 superpowers. One of them is the ability to foresee danger. Because I didn't know what kind of danger it was, I could only leave first and warn you later. This may seem selfish, but I don't think it's a crime, right? Cisco nodded slowly and asked for confirmation. In other words, before the crown-level Mason Walker discovered the danger, you already predicted it? O'Block subconsciously held his breath as soon as the words left his mouth. Lu Qing nodded calmly. You could say that. P.S. Hey, I'll update in advance for you guys today. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 587. You can say that? As the disciple of the crown-level Mighty One, Mason Walker, O'Block felt humiliated by Lu Qing's reply. However, when he looked up, he saw that Lu Qing was neither arrogant nor boastful. Lu Qing was describing the menu calmly, as though he was describing what was on the menu tonight. This wasn't boasting or bragging. It was the truth. O'Block took a deep breath and told himself that blacksmiths were good at forging, tailors were good at making clothes, and everyone had their own unique strengths. A king wasn't better than a commoner in every aspect. After quietly listening to Lu Qing's reply, Grand Teacher Cisco smiled. I understand. After that, he nodded and left the door at an unhurried pace. O'Block was in charge of the aftermath. With a solemn expression, he said to Lu Qing, "That's all for questioning. Thank you for your cooperation. If necessary, we will visit again." Since the Grand Teacher didn't say anything, it meant that Lu Qing wasn't lying. Okay. Lu Qing nodded casually. O'Block stared at him deeply. Without another word, he turned around and chased after Cisco. Originally, he wanted to take this opportunity to bring up the matter of a challenge. However, the first reason was that the Holy Grail had been stolen, which was a serious matter. As a member of the Order of Knights, he couldn't just think about his personal matters and ignore the bigger picture. The second reason was that he suddenly felt uncertain in his heart, as if he had lost his confidence. That was why he didn't say anything even though he wanted to. Although Lu Qing isn't at the crown level, he's still at the same level as me. However, he's a level higher than me. He has a sense of transcendence. O'Block's face darkened as he entered the car. After watching them leave, Lu Qing closed the door and returned to the living room. Yenjika stood up and leaned over. She mimicked Lu Qing's tone and said, "You can say that. Qing, you're really awesome." "Why do I feel like you're mocking me?" Lu Qing looked at Ku amused. That guy just now was O'Block, the one who came to Gaofan before. I saw in his eyes that he wasn't convinced and wanted to fight me again. I had no choice but to put on a show to scare him away. Otherwise, with only 70 to 80% of my strength, I might not be his match. Skilled bluff. Yenjika rolled her eyes. You still remember who he is? Of course. Those were the days when we traveled freely. I'll never forget it. Lu Qing laughed. The moment I saw the Brutale delegation, I remembered him. I was chased around the streets by him this morning. Yenjika pursed her lips and turned her head. She smiled and said, I remember him too. At this time, Aunt Du returned to her own room and left the place to the young couple. Yenjika looked around. She looked at Lu Cheng. The meaning behind his words was self-evident. I'll go check what's in the fridge and freezer. Lu Cheng lowered his head and smiled. As he walked towards the kitchen, he thought, there are still some dumplings and noodles left from yesterday. Should I make dumpling noodles? What are you doing here? Lu Cheng took off his apron and put it on. You're making supper for your wife. I'm going to make supper for my darling. Yenjika chuckled. You're such a glutton. You want to steal my food every time. Well, I think my egg fried rice is as good as yours. How about a bowl of egg fried rice? A big bowl. Lu Cheng answered with a big smile in his eyes. Just like that, the couple kept each other busy. They exchanged a few words from time to time. Cheng Cheng, are you going back to Songqing soon? Yenjika asked as she cracked the eggs. Yes, I have to go back and get the certificate. I even skipped the oral examination, so I can't skip this. Besides, there's another thing that needs to be settled, you know. Lu Cheng looked at the pot of boiling water and added fuel to the fire. Then I'll go and meet Dirty Tong and the others. Yenjika said happily. She paused for a few seconds and bit her lower lip. Then she said with melancholy, I'm going to start learning from my tutor next semester. I'll be busy. You're going to enter the professional circle again. You'll be busy too. Why don't we go on a trip this summer? We can ask for the Lovelock, the pyramids, and the grassland. What do you think? Although Lu Cheng was a little confused by his wife's sudden change of topic, he quickly recovered. He poured the dumplings into the pot and said, Okay, we'll come up with a strategy later. Okay, let's go to Songqing first and then back to Xioshan. We'll stay at home until August so that my dad won't be angry. Yenjika thought about the plan while frying the eggs. In the end, she said, Cheng, I've recently found an animal that I like. What animal? Bro Flat Top. Ah, what's that? Honey badger, white hair and silver cape. Its motto is, if you're not in a fight, you're on your way to a fight. Oh, and don't tell me who the enemy is. Tell me how many there are. Tell me the time and place. Sounds interesting. Yeah, and hey, Ku, it's time for your egg fried rice. I can faintly smell something burning. Ouch. After a while, a voice sounded in the restaurant again. Cheng, who are you talking to on WeChat? Smith and me. Spider, what did he say? He asked me why my alert level suddenly changed back to dangerous. He said he's going to monitor me 24/7 again. You kept laughing just now. What did you say? I said because I bragged in front of the great teacher. Pfft, what did he say? He said F***K. Haha, who on earth did he learn Chinese from? In the collection room of a luxurious villa, a deep voice was speaking in an excited and intoxicated tone. There are billions of people in the world, and I'm the only one who has evolved such an ability. By absorbing the blood of others, I obtain the corresponding ability. It's the ability of God. This was a thin man wearing a black tuxedo and a dark red cape. His facial features were deep, and his eyes were red. In his hand was an ancient silver cup that seemed to be filled with blood, but it was also empty. Yes, it's so special that they never thought that the people you killed had their eyes cut out from their foreheads. It wasn't a cult ritual, but just a disguise. Your real goal is their blood. It's their special trait. Isn't that right, Nightmare? Opposite the man in the dark red cape was a brown-eyed man drinking champagne. He was in his 30s or 40s and dressed meticulously. The handkerchief in front of his chest pocket was folded into a flower. Yes, thank you for your help, Godslayer. The man in the dark red cape laughed out loud. When I extract the blood of the Savior, absorb it, and digest it, I'll truly enter the terror grade. In the future, I'll replace that old guy from the Samano royal family and become the emperor of the sanguine race. Having said that, he looked to the other side. There stood a man with dark skin and a beard who had features that were very characteristic of the Dead Sea. The man in the dark red cape pressed his right hand to his chest and bowed elegantly. Thank you. Thank you for letting me show the strength of the terror grade at the last minute, confusing many people. Pharaoh thinks highly of you. The bearded man said with a serious expression. The bearded man said with a serious expression. In 2 months he has a big operation and needs your help. No problem, as long as my absorption goes smoothly. The man in the dark red cape smiled and watched as the bearded man walked to the ancient coffin in the corner. He took off his clothes, wrapped himself in a bandage, and lay inside. He lost all signs of life, turning into a real old mummy. Look, there's no attacker here. There's only the collection of mummies bought by the collector, Mr. Constantine. The man in the dark red cape smiled smugly. He asked the brown-eyed man, Godslayer, why did you agree to cooperate? The Godslayer touched his nose with his index finger and said, Maybe, it's more interesting to have one more terror baddie in this world. At this moment, the sound of knocking came from the surveillance system. The man in the dark red cape glanced and said, It's Lucas. After that, he opened the door of the collection room and returned to the living room to let the black-robed, green-eyed spirit cultivator, Lucas, enter. What did the great teacher ask you to do? The man in the dark red cape asked. Lucas looked at him calmly and said, Constantine, the great teacher asked me to tell you that in 2 days, at most 2 days, more than 10 Terror Grandmasters, a few special forces equipped with man-made weapons and various high-tech equipment, and more special agents who are good at tracking will arrive in Connecticut. The uniqueness of the Holy Grail can't be hidden for long. You have to complete the absorption before this deadline, and try not to damage the Holy Grail too much. When the time comes, as long as you return it secretly, the security level will be lowered. If this situation continues, no one can take it. Don't think that you can avoid the road. There are eyes watching from the sky. The more deserted a place is, the more obvious it is. The man in the dark red cape, Constantine, was silent for a moment. He raised the Holy Grail and smiled. Okay. A few days later, Lu Qing keenly sensed from the news that the security level in Connecticut had been lowered. Hence, he sent a message to Smith. The Holy Grail has been found? The 3 terror grade attackers have been caught? After a while, Smith replied, Apparently, the Holy Grail has been found. It's in a trash can. It's a little damaged. We've only confirmed the identity of the assailant, but we haven't found out who it is. Among the assailants are the Godslayer and the Nightmare. In short, this matter has come to an end. Come to an end? Come to an end just like that? Lu Qing was surprised. Such a serious matter had come to an end just like that? Or was there something brewing under the surface? Before he could ask further, Smith sent a message. Lu, I want to ask you something. Go ahead. Lu Qing answered generously. Smith was puzzled. I've been practicing according to the awakening and improvement of superpowers, but haven't made any progress for more than a year. I'm getting further and further away from the dangerous grade. Lu, do you have any good suggestions? I find you more and more mysterious and hard to guess. Find a few exotic spiders to bite you? Lu Qing joked. That's not funny at all. Smith replied. Lu Qing pondered for a moment and said, Actually, the improvement of superpowers is related to the strengthening of yourself. The better control of your body, the easier it is to go deeper. I suggest you awaken your self-spirit. I'm from the mission. Smith emphasized helplessly. Why does Lu feel so unreliable? Haha, an ascetic from one of the branches of the mission sect can be used as a reference. Lu Qing stopped teasing. After putting down his phone, he looked out of the window and thought leisurely, the matter of the Holy Grail has come to an end. Ku will be taking her final exams next. After that, she will return to Songqing and meet up with her master to look for the secret residence of the Longhu Immortal at the bottom of Weishui Lake. P.S. Damn it, Qidian's backend is drawing. I could have brought it forward. Begging for votes. Chapter 588. At the end of June, the new campus of Songqing University. It feels like I haven't been here for a long time. Yanzhika stood on the long bridge, gazing at the Weishui Lake illuminated by street lamps, as well as the lakeside road that she and Lu Qing had walked on day after day. She felt that every scene and every corner reminded her of a different scene. The past pierced through the gap of 2 years, and reappeared vividly in her mind. Lu Qing also sighed and echoed, I haven't walked on this road for almost a year. But from time to time, she would recall the initial throbbing and the purest beauty. She would think about how hard it was to come by and tell herself not to get used to it, but to cherish and protect it. Let's go. Big sister invites you to take a walk again. Yinjika's eyes lit up, smiling as she extended her slender right hand. Lu Qing grabbed it and looked ahead. He coughed twice and chuckled. I remember that every time you took the initiative to invite me to take a walk by the lake, you were hinting and tacitly allowing me to be intimate. What about today? Yinjika's eyes widened, and her mouth was half open. Her pretty face couldn't help but blush. No way. It's all because you're such a hooligan. I'm not going to take a walk with you, she added bitterly as she tried to pull her hand back. However, Lu Cheng's grip was so tight that she couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and follow him from the other end of the bridge to the lakeside. She followed the memories of the past, crossed familiar scenes, and wandered the intertwining journey between reality and illusion. Holding hands, first kissing, the girl taking out the tissue and the boy cleaning the wooden bench, the casual gossip, the inexperience of sneaking a few kisses every night after taking a stroll. Suddenly, Yinjika and Lu Qing seemed to have walked into the gap between the past and the present. Luckily we're still together. Otherwise it would definitely be very, very regretful. Yinjika suddenly said and sighed with emotion. That kind of regret would be a wound that wouldn't heal for the rest of their lives. Lu Cheng's fingers moved slightly and tightly interlocked with his little fairies. He solemnly promised, "We'll always walk on this road." Yes, yes. Yinjika nodded vigorously. After a few more steps, Lu Qing pointed to the side of the road and chuckled. This is where I found Qing Yu and the golden core. Here. Yinjika's eyebrows relaxed. She looked over curiously and whispered. She stared at it for a few seconds, then suddenly turned sideways to face the lake. She put her palms together, closed her eyes, and began to chant. Ku, what are you doing? Lu Qing asked blankly. The girl's dimples appeared. She pursed her lips slightly and smiled sweetly. I'm thanking Qing Yu. If it wasn't for it, a certain idiot might have retreated on his own. This is the cause of everything. It probably won't like you saying that. A bad life is better than a good death. Lu Qing laughed and shook his head. Then he cleared his throat and said, the real reason was that I saw you standing outside the martial arts club in your Han Chinese costume, and finally plucked up the courage to strike up a conversation with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come running by the lake. Yinjika rolled her starry eyes and asked him back with a funny smile. Could this be the lyrics of the song, just because I took an extra look at you in the crowd? Her voice was clear and delicate, and her voice was beautiful. Lu Qing listened with a smile and teased. Cuckoo, are you whispering sweet nothings to me? If you say so, then so be it. Yinjika put her hands behind her back and walked forward lightly. The couple circled the lake, revisiting the places where they had been intimate before. After calming down the heat on their faces and the rhythm of their breathing, they finally waited for Geyser. He was still old, but the frequency of his coughing had obviously decreased. Although the 9 words formula had not completely healed his old injuries, it had eased him a lot. Let's get into the water. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. Sure, Zhang Wo admitted frankly. Yinjika covered her mouth and laughed. She felt that this pair of master and disciple were very similar in some aspects. They were a family, and they would enter the same house. Am I scolding myself? Unreliable old man. Lu Qing thought to himself. He took out his phone, wallet and other things and handed them to his wife. After thinking for a moment, Geyser felt that there was no need to pretend to be a master. He also left his phone behind and walked into the lake step by step. The cold air around him condensed into crystals, as if it was going to freeze his body but not affect his movements. Lu Qing imitated him. After taking a deep breath, every inch of his skin shone with cold light. The master and disciple walked further and further away. Less and less of their body parts were exposed to the water. Finally, they steadied their center of gravity and completely disappeared in front of Yinjika. Light rippled around him and a faint pressure came. Lu Qing let his body enter the embryonic state, just like when he practiced underwater to seek the mutation of his root pulp. At his current level, there was no problem for him to stay underwater for 10 to 20 minutes. In the swaying of the lush water plants, Geyser's mouth opened and opened, stirring up ripples. The ripples flowed to Lu Qing in circles, and brought a voice that seemed to come from the horizon. The bottom of the lake is quite big. I did a rough search last time and didn't find anything. Are we going to search inch by inch this time? Lu Cheng replied in the form of voice transmission. Master, think about it. The black carp swallowed the Jindan, and it must have acted up on the spot. The range of its swimming and jumping is limited. We may find something in the area near the spot where we found it. If we can't find it, I'll give you a big slap. Gizershur always felt that his disciple was unreliable most of the time. Moving forward slowly with their feet on the ground, Lu Cheng and Gizershur looked around in the dark, sparkling water. They tried to discern the peculiarities and formed ice mirror or enemy heart freezing move to comprehend the finer details. After searching around the area near the lake, Gizershur suddenly stopped. He frowned and said in the form of voice transmission, "You don't say. The feeling here is a little different from the last time I was here. It seems to be changing according to the phase of the moon." The problem couldn't be found by searching alone. But after comparing the two, the abnormality appeared. With his strong night vision, Lu Cheng grasped the faint light under the water and looked around. He had a panoramic view of the entire area. Gravel, rocks, swaying water plants, and rubbish thrown down by someone. Other than these, there was nothing else, not to mention a place that looked like the entrance of a cave. After a few seconds of silence, Lu Cheng followed the plan he had prepared. He formed a hand seal with his hands and changed it continuously. The visualized ancient characters in his mind jumped as well. Confrontation. Army. Doe. Swordsman. He opened his mouth and his voice shook the surroundings, making the water undulate in a regular manner. Wholeness. Formation. Deference. Forward. Attainment. As soon as the word attainment came out, the 9 seal scripts in the depths of Lu Cheng's mind appeared at the same time. They combined to form the 3-dimensional, mysterious rune. Rumble. At this moment, a low buzzing sound came from somewhere. As the water rippled, the bottom of the lake formed by gravel and rocks cracked open, revealing a stone staircase that extended downwards. A camouflage set up with the help of the moon. Gizershur commented with disdain. Brat, the night you got the Jindan was when the moon was waning, right? And the black carp doesn't have much intelligence. I don't remember. Lu Cheng answered honestly. What else do you remember? Gizershur shook his head and laughed. He walked along the stone staircase into the cave. It was moist inside, but there was no water. Lu Cheng suppressed the surge of emotions in his heart and followed his master to the bottom. He saw a simple and empty stone room. There was only a cloud bed here. On it were a few pieces of yellowed paper and a tattered feather robe. It doesn't look like the cave residence of Longhu Immortal. Gizershur, who had seen many relics of cultivation, frowned and whispered. Lu Cheng looked around and guessed. Maybe it's a place for seclusion. The feather robe seemed to be worn by Longhu Immortal before he died. What about his body? It's possible. Gizershur approached and was about to pick up the feather robe. However, the light breeze caused the robe to instantly decay and scatter in the stone room. The notebooks, on the other hand, were still intact. Lu Cheng looked at them and read the words on the first page. My life is coming to an end. 130 years of hard work is all in vain. What a pity, what a pity. Predecessors sought the independence of the soul and tried to give birth to a baby in the Jindan. They wanted to break free from the shackles of the body and travel between heaven and earth. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, no one succeeded. I didn't follow this path. I imitated the immortal world to form the Jindan and sought longevity. However, the road ahead was boundless and full of dangers. It ended here. Gizershur flipped over the other pages and read quickly. At the end, the master and disciple finally understood what Longhu Immortal did, and why his Jindan was preserved until today. According to what Longhu Immortal said, once a cultivator passed away, the Jindan that lost the control of the spirit would either quickly lose control and explode, or barely maintain the balance and dissipate quickly. He used ice and fire to imitate yin and yang and the starry sky to form the Jindan. He wanted to reflect nature and rotate in balance, hoping to be immortal like heaven and earth. Because of this, before he passed away, he decided to give it a try. that was to reverse the spirit and feed the body back to the body, so that the body would be completely destroyed. This would ignite the spirit and completely integrate the spirit and the golden elixir into one, using the immortality of the golden elixir to achieve longevity. In consideration of the possibility of success, he changed the order of the stars inside the golden elixir and engraved the 9 words formula and his own cultivation methods inside. This idea was unprecedented. Longhu Immortal wasn't confident at all. Before he tried it, he wrote down notes for his friends to refer to as a trial and error. As for what happened in the middle, Lu Cheng and Geezer sure didn't know. They only saw the final result, which was that Longhu Immortal didn't live forever. The Jindan didn't have an independent will, but it was strangely preserved until now. Chapter 589. Lu Cheng and Geezer sure retracted their gazes and surveyed their surroundings. They didn't discover anything else. Even after using Ice Mirror and Enemy Heart Freezing move to sense their surroundings and the 9 words formula to seek resonance, they still found nothing. Where's Longhu Immortal's natal artifact? Whispered Shi Jiangwo. Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, maybe the Longhu Immortal sect doesn't have a natal artifact due to their unique method of pill formation. That Gu Hui who attacked me wouldn't be so careless as to not use such a powerful artifact. That makes sense. Cough, you've improved your judgment. Geezer sure couldn't help but sigh. Lu Cheng was annoyed and amused at the same time. Master, don't think of me as the student who just started learning martial arts. I'm already close to physical invulnerability. After so many years of practicing martial arts, participating in so many competitions, and experiencing so many things, how could my judgment and knowledge not improve? So what? Even if you reach physical invulnerability, you're still my disciple. Geezer sure glared at him. He didn't continue the topic and change the topic. Have you finished reading all the confidential information? Is it useful? After Lu Cheng decided to walk the path of blending martial arts and cultivation, Comrade Shi Jiangwo used his connections to obtain the collected remnants of cultivation and over 30 volunteer experiment reports from several major military human research institutes. This helped him further grasp the essence and details of his cultivation. This is also the other reason why I've become mysterious in the eyes of others. Lu Cheng sighed inwardly. After a few seconds of silence, he said, I've finished reading it, but I still can't figure out the most crucial part. If it were so easy to figure it out, our country would have long had a cultivator town security team. Geezer sure laughed and scolded him. Others have spent decades to achieve what they have now. You want to surpass them in a month or two. I just want to find the point that suits me the most. I don't necessarily need to understand the entire system and study it thoroughly. Lu Cheng explained with a bitter smile. Geezer sure waved his hand. All right, let's talk outside. There doesn't seem to be anything useful here. Okay. Lu Cheng nodded slightly. He turned to the cloud bed and bowed solemnly. He wanted to tell Longhu Immortal the result, and tell him that this was the wrong path. But in the end he couldn't bear it and only sighed softly. Thank you for finding the way for me. Senior, thank you for giving me this opportunity. After bowing 3 times, Lu Cheng collected his thoughts and followed his master out of the abode. Sigh, the path of longevity, the path of longevity. Geezer sure stood at the entrance and sighed. With a wave of his palm, he collapsed the surroundings and buried Longhu Immortal. In his mind, she was dead and buried. Step by step, they walked back to the shore. The master and disciple shook off the layer of ice that had condensed on their bodies and evaporated the remaining water. Except for their wrinkled clothes, they were no different from before they went into the lake. Yenjika heaved a sigh of relief and walked up to them, returning their belongings. Lu Cheng used his palm as an iron to flatten his clothes with white steam swirling around him. He asked his master a few questions. When Geezer sure was far away, he turned on his phone screen and entered the app. He cleared his thoughts and took notes. He said, in Longhu Immortal's last words, reflect nature, and be immortal like heaven and earth reminded me of something. Back then when I developed, extended, and improved his celestial star system and regarded all the stars as fire force, and the darkness of the universe as the counterpart of ice force, I felt that I was connected to the universe in a more subtle way. Perhaps, it was the secret that I could communicate with the universe after I formed the core formation. After saying this, he looked at Yenjika beside him and said, half explaining and half translating his voice into words. At that time, I felt that it was quite miraculous and I should remember it. But later on, I didn't have a similar feeling and gradually forgot about it. If it weren't for Longhu Immortal's words today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have remembered it until you achieved Dan equilibrium. Longhu Immortal's thought process of moving the stars, changing the layout, and writing the 9 words formula and cultivation techniques in the Jindan can be used as a reference. This way, I can naturally use the 9 words formula, force concentration, and fighting formula when I'm at Dan equilibrium. Just thinking about it makes me excited. When that time comes, I'll be a superhuman with extraordinary strength. Yenjika burst into laughter and her dimples bloomed like flowers. She felt warm at the thought of Lu Qing writing down his thoughts in front of her. After translating each line, Lu Qing read it twice from the beginning and saved it after making some slight changes. He turned to his little fairy and said, "Now we're just waiting for you to make up for the innate stage, understand withdraw, and achieve Dan equilibrium. When that time comes, I'll be able to observe the details and verify them." Oh, Yenjika pretended not to care, but her beautiful black eyes looked up. "Have you talked to Dirty Tong and the others? Are you going to sleep with them?" Lu Qing grabbed her delicate hand and walked back to the bridge. "We've already talked about it. I'm going to sleep with Ruru. Besides, the new girl in their dormitory is already doing her internship in Songcheng. She stays in the city at night and won't come back," Yenjika replied with a smile. Lu Qing was about to say something when his right foot suddenly became heavy as if it was carrying a 1,000-pound rock. This made him lose his balance and stagger. He swayed his center of gravity and steadied himself easily. He looked at his wife beside him and asked, "What's going on?" Under the light of the street lamps and the surrounding darkness, Yenjika's face was delicate and beautiful. Her long and black eyelashes trembled as she answered innocently, "What do you mean what's going on? I don't know." At this point, she couldn't help but turn her head and look to the side. She covered her mouth and let out a series of clear and pleasant laughter. Lu Qing suddenly understood. He said with surprise and joy, "You've awakened your supernatural ability?" The supernatural ability inherited from the 2 elders of the Ji family and the Empress Dowager? Compared to brother-in-law, Ku should have awakened her supernatural ability more easily. The reason why it hadn't appeared was because she was born with a deficiency. Now that her supernatural ability had awakened, did it mean that she had already made up for her deficiency? "Yeah. Didn't I look tired the past 2 days? You thought I was suffering from exam syndrome, and massaged me the whole time." Yenjika raised her chin and answered with a smile, "I was going to give you a surprise later, but I couldn't hold back just now." "Awesome. You're indeed Coach Yen. What kind of supernatural ability is it?" Lu Qing asked, giving her a thumbs up. "Well, it's related to the Earth's magnetic field. There are changes in attraction and repulsion, light and heavy." Yenjika rolled her eyes and answered thoughtfully, "So your congenital deficiency is gone?" Lu Qing asked with concern. The girl pursed her lips and said proudly, "Of course. I feel like I'm about to understand the meaning of withdraw." "So fast?" Lu Qing blurted out in surprise. Then he received the look of his wife. "Huh? What did you say?" He quickly changed his words and nodded with a normal expression. "You're right. You've been at the top of the professional 9th pin for more than 2 years, and you've been enduring the torture of your congenital deficiency. You've never changed your love for martial arts. You've worked hard and fought hard for it. Your willpower is strong enough. You admire me, right?" Yenjika raised her head and flipped her hair, pretending to be proud and complacent. She added silently in her heart, "I practice martial arts not only because I like it, but also because I want to accompany you and do something for you. Even if it's difficult for me to reach the inhuman stage in the future, it's enough." Lu Qing was overjoyed and praised. He was criticized for his exaggeration, but the girl was smiling contentedly. Just like the past, the 2 of them said goodbye outside the female dormitory. Yenjika found the dormitory that had been moved once. Under Zhong Yanru's guidance, She saw Li Liantong and Shi Xiangyang. Wow, Ko, your skin is so good. It's white, tender and smooth. Li Liantong's eyes widened. She leaned close and praised. Is this the effect of being nourished frequently? Bah. Can you not be so dirty when you talk? Let me get used to it first. Yenjika replied, annoyed and amused at the same time. This is the result of cultivation, not what you said. Really? Li Liantong looked at her friend from head to toe, and clicked her tongue. I don't believe you. Your figure is better too. Ah, I want a boyfriend so much. At this moment, Shi Xiangyang ignored her and hugged Yenjika. She praised. Ko, you're indeed fairer, softer and more fragrant. Zhong Yanru mocked Li Liantong. Dirty Tong has always been ambitious and incompetent. She has a lot of theoretical knowledge, but she doesn't dare to put it into practice at all. I don't like those who like me, and I don't like those who like me. What can I do? I'm also very desperate. Li Liantong spread her hands and answered. You have to try if you like those who like you. How do you know if they don't like you if you don't try? My silly Ching always says, what if? Yenjika reminded him, exasperated at his failure to meet her expectations. Li Liantong was about to answer when she suddenly remembered her friend's words. She thought for a while and asked in confusion. Cool, what did you just say? Cultivation? Have you been reading too many novels? Do you think I'm stupid? Cultivation is different from martial arts. For ordinary girls, they can only cultivate their spirit, and use their spirit to nourish their body. Although they can't cultivate much strength, their skin will be better and whiter, and there won't be any pimples left. Yenjika described. When Lu Cheng was at his lowest point, he thought of starting a simplified cultivation beauty class, but he didn't have the mood to think about the details. When the sequelae were cured and his strength recovered, he didn't need to do this. Instead, he gradually improved the class, in his daily discussions with Yenjika, making it easy to get started and not difficult to cultivate. Of course, he didn't expect to strengthen his body very well either. Really? Li Liantong, Zhong Yanru and Shi Xiangyang asked in surprise and doubt. Cheng did it. His martial arts are mixed with cultivation. Yenjika nodded with a solemn expression. Wow! Li Liantong exclaimed. Can we practice it? Of course, Cheng specially made it simplified. Yenjika answered with a little pride. I want to make a portrait of your Cheng. Sooner or later. Li Liantong paced back and forth excitedly. So did Zhong Yanru and Shi Xiangyang. Don't be like that. He's still alive. Yenjika covered her face and laughed. After 10 minutes, Li Liantong, Zhong Yanru and Shi Xiangyang sat cross-legged on their respective beds. Yenjika made hand seals and constantly changed the position of her feet. Confrontation. 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 Seeing that Dirty Tong and the others had calmed down and obtained a tranquil state of mind, Yenjika withdrew her stance and glanced left and right. She felt the same as when Lu Qing saw a group of foreigners wearing Taoist robes and practicing cultivation. Why do I feel like they're spreading a cult? Chapter 590. Kai Zhongming and the others had moved out of the dormitory, because of the new students moving in, and the use of the West Dormitory garden. However, Lu Qing was still an intern, so a bed was reserved for him. At the door of room 502, Unit 1, Building 6, he heard the noise and the strong smell of alcohol before he entered. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are the graduation photos and certificates. Are these guys going crazy for the last time? Lu Qing smiled and pushed the door open. Kai Zhongming was holding a paper cup in one hand, and a small bottle of Red Star Erguotu in the other. He was not surprised to see his bad friend come back. He looked at him up and down and said, Cheng, you've recovered pretty well. I didn't know you were hurt before. You didn't believe me when I told you last time, replied Lu Qing with a smile. He extended his hand and patted Little Ming's shoulder. Little Ming jumped, grimaced in pain and almost staggered. You're taking revenge. How long has it been? You still remember? Kai Zhongming moved his arm angrily. Revenge is a dish best served cold. You're going to go home and be a tycoon. You won't get another chance like this again, said Lu Qing half jokingly and half emotionally. As they were about to leave school, most of their former roommates had found a home. Zhao Chang had successfully applied for postgraduate studies and had begun to take private jobs. Zhang Jingye had his wish fulfilled and stayed in Songcheng. He had entered a branch of a large company. Although the company was famous for its overtime work, the salary was really good. Old Qiu Zhigao had received several offers, but he was not satisfied. In the end, through Qin Mo's relationship, he entered a local private enterprise. The salary was not high, but it was good that he stayed in a big city. Mao Yuanxing and his girlfriend both went to a foreign company. Qin Mo got a venture capital from his father and planned to start a business first. Currently, there were two directions. One was to form a team and promote the giant company. In the meantime, he would do his own products. For example, when he persuaded the restaurant chain to accept mobile payments, he would give back his own part to the merchants and build a closer relationship with them. This would pave the way for him to sell the cashier software later. Of course, this was not the only way. The second was to invest in a local third-party payment company. Although it was currently a battle between two major powers, there were still many scattered companies. Just like some chess and card websites, large amounts of gambling funds could be easily checked. Using the official payment method was the same as courting death. Then, they would find similar third-party payments and use methods like topping up to avoid the goal of achieving the goal of money laundering. As the saying goes, every snake has its way, and every mouse has its hole. When Lu Cheng heard Qin Mo talk about this before, he had a whole new level of respect for him. He didn't expect this rich second generation who usually fooled around to be so smart. Of course, when it came to starting a business, it didn't necessarily mean success with ideas, funds, and connections. On this road, many seniors had fallen. So far, only Tang Wen, who was addicted to games, hadn't found a job. But he didn't care too much. After all, he had passed the Qinghai exam. Everything was fine. After chatting with everyone about their recent situation, Lu Qing took out a paper cup and poured hot water into it. It was slightly cold. He looked around and said, "We have graduated and stepped into society. I hope we can all fly higher." Fly higher. The half-drunk Zhao Chang, Qiu Zhigao, and the others shouted complacently and excitedly. They gulped down the wine in their cups. After throwing water bottles and all kinds of unwanted items at each retention event, they all went limp and fell into silence. It wasn't clear whether it was because they were drunk and confused, or because they were melancholy that they could never go back to being young and frivolous. Lu Qing looked around and laughed softly. He secretly made a hand gesture and sang the word confrontation, like a lullaby. The atmosphere in the room became quiet. From time to time, the sound of water bottles breaking and shouts of liberation, regret, venting, and lamentation could be heard. Lu Qing took a picture of this scene and sent it to Yanjika. With one hand in each hand, he threw all his roommates back to the upper bunk, including the drunk little Ming. "Cheng, why is my mind so clear? Why can't my hands and feet listen to me?" he said. Qin Mo turned over on the opposite bed and answered, "Me too. My head doesn't hurt." "Did you drink fake wine?" Kai Zongming guessed blankly. Lu Qing didn't say anything. He left the dormitory and borrowed Zhao Chang's spare bedsheet to sleep for the night. The next day, he trained by the Weishui Lake again. He tried to adjust the positions of his qi, blood, force, and spirit during force concentration, so that the stars they formed would naturally form the word fighting. After the morning training, he received his bachelor's uniform. Under the gaze of many reporters and freshmen, he took graduation photos and dormitory souvenirs. Yanjika borrowed a similar outfit and was invited to take photos with her major, pretending that she was still one of them. In the end, the couple got rid of the irrelevant people and took photos in every memorable place in the new campus. In the following days, Lu Cheng and Yanjika stayed in Songqing for a few days. They revisited old haunts and returned to their old dating scenes. They tasted all kinds of familiar yet strange delicacies, making the bits and pieces in their memories more vivid. It was a pity that the spicy crab restaurant was doing worse and worse. It closed before the new year, so the couple couldn't relive their first date. They could only find a similar restaurant. At the beginning of July, they reluctantly bid farewell to Songqing and flew back to Xiushan. The first 2 to 3 years of college were very short compared to the rest of their lives. However, in Lucheng and Yenjika's hearts. It was the beginning of the baby bird, opening its eyes and seeing the world. None of the memories could be forgotten. They would be engraved in their bones. Carrying his luggage and stepping into the house, Lucheng was asked as soon as he saw his mother, "Where's Jika?" "I'm your biological child," Lucheng replied, amused. "Mom, Jika has been in America for half a year. She has to go home. She'll come over for dinner tomorrow night." "Okay, I'll go to the market tomorrow morning." "Why are you back so late?" "The food is cold. I'll heat it up for you before you eat." Qifeng nagged. She picked up the plate and walked into the kitchen. "I'm late," Lucheng explained with a wry smile. Lu Jisheng picked up the thermos and sized his son up. "You've recovered well. Are you hungry? Eat first. I'll go out for a walk." He said the last sentence very softly to prevent Qifeng from hearing. As soon as Lu Jisheng went out, Qifeng poked her head out and asked, "Cheng, did your dad go out?" "Yes." Lucheng didn't help to hide it. "Your dad is really too much. Is he so addicted to chess? He can't even sit still. If he wasn't waiting for you, he would have gone out after dinner." Qifeng nagged and retreated into the kitchen. "In order to wait for me, Dad deliberately postponed the chess game," thought Lucheng, flattered. He waved to his two cousins on the sofa, Qi Yunfei and Chen Xiaoxiao. Then he turned around and walked to the dining table. He took a photo of the dishes that didn't need to be heated and sent it to Yenjika. "Do you want to eat?" "Me too." Yenjika added a picture of a table full of food with an emoji of "come on, let's hurt each other." Lucheng couldn't help but laugh. "Brother Lucheng, are you chatting with sister-in-law?" Qi Yunfei looked more beautiful and cute with her short hair. Her college entrance exam results were average, only good enough for an ordinary university. However, she was very satisfied and didn't want to repeat her studies. "Yes," Lucheng answered frankly. Qi Yunfei said half doubtfully and half emotionally, "You have been together for 3.5 years. Why are you still so clingy?" "What do you mean by clingy? This is called having the same 3 views. We can talk about many things and topics," Lucheng retorted, annoyed and amused. "Aren't you and Ding like this? For example, just now they said that they both love delicious food, especially Xioshan specialties." Hearing Lucheng's question, Qi Yunfei's expression suddenly became strange. Chen Xiaoxiao, who still had some baby fat left, looked at the direction of the kitchen and said in a low voice, "Brother Lucheng, Sister Feifei broke up long ago." "Ah." Lucheng was confused. Immediately, a strong desire to gossip surged. When did it happen? What happened? His cousin and Ding Yanba had been dating for more than 3 years, and they started from the most ignorant and most innocent junior high school. How could they break up so suddenly? Qi Yunfei wrinkled her nose and said, "He hooked up with other girls behind my back." "Humph, he specially applied for a second account, but the password was the same. I played with his phone once, and was curious about who the number belonged to. I tried to log in and found that the girl was just average. I don't know why he liked her." "Do you need me to teach him a lesson?" Lucheng suddenly realized and comforted her. No. Qi Yunfei hurriedly shook her head. "You are quite generous?" Lucheng asked in surprise. Chen Xiaoxiao couldn't help but laugh. "Brother Lucheng, Sister Feifei had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up. Her deskmate is now Ding Yanba regretting it, and has been wanting to get back together. She had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up." Lucheng sighed and laughed at himself. "I really don't understand you young people." After dinner, Lucheng helped to clean up the table and sat on the sofa. While chatting with his two cousins, he thought about how to spend this month in Xioshan. Look for Fatty Jiang? He didn't have summer holidays anymore. He had officially joined a company in Huacheng. After Qin Rui got his professional 9th pin certificate, he went to Gaofun to look for more opportunities. He wasn't in Xioshan either. Tao Xiaofei reluctantly settled down. His father sent him to a county project, and he could only come back for a few days every month. Now that he thought about it, Lucheng realized that he couldn't find any good friends in Xioshan. Everyone was starting to get busy for the future. At this moment, Yenjika sent a message. Sitting blankly expression: Sister Jingjing is outside the Great Wall. Shuang 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 was brought back to the company in Gaofun by her father. Song Li also found a job in Gaofun. And, anyway, other than my relatives and you, I am all alone in Xiushan. I feel a little sad. The couple's hearts are in sync. Lu Qing sighed to himself, laughing out tears expression. What a coincidence. I was also counting friends of the same age. And the result was the same as yours. Speaking of this, he added emotionally, that's a good thing. Because we have all grown up. For the whole of July, Lu Qing and Yan Zhika stayed at different places and moved around frequently. Sometimes they would go to Zhengke or Ningxue to accompany their elders. Other times, they would go to Jiangnan to play for a few days. At the beginning of August, they started to pack their luggage and prepare for a 20-odd-day trip. Their first stop was overseas. Their destination was Nile, the place with pyramids and mummies. Chapter 591. South of Nile, Teton City. It was August, close to the desert. It was dry and hot here. Under the scorching sun, even the air seemed to be distorted. Looking as far as the eye could see, the dense fog made it seem like an illusion. Lu Qing and Yan Zhika, each riding a camel, swayed as they approached the remains of the temple where Isis was worshipped. Not far behind them, a professional tour guide in a long robe and headscarf followed with narrowed eyes. He was invisible himself to avoid disturbing the guests. With Lu Cheng's strength, he had no problem traveling in the Nile tourism industry. However, he didn't have to rely on brute force for everything. That would lose his fun and mood. Hiring a tour guide with excellent connections at a high price could save him a lot of trouble. Just like earlier, if it were just two foreign tourists wanting to ride a camel, they would definitely be extorted and might not be able to enjoy themselves. However, once the tour guide stepped in and found a familiar friend, the problem was immediately solved. The reasonable price and attentive service made the young couple feel comfortable riding the camel. You get what you pay for. If it could be solved with money, there was no need to resort to violence. After approaching the ancient and dilapidated temple, Yan Zhika jumped off the camel lightly and looked at the interior happily. She had long sleeves and trousers, and her black hair was tied up with a headscarf. She looked like a local, but her actual purpose was to protect herself from the sun. A girl's obsession with sunscreen was unimaginable to men. Lu Qing, on the other hand, was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and martial arts shoes without any self-awareness. This is the temple of Mother Earth goddess Isis. Yan Zhika pointed to the front and introduced to Lu Qing. It is said that one of her original forms is Inanna from Sumerian mythology, the goddess of Venus, fertility, sex and love. Seeing someone nodding in confusion, Yan Zhika said with a smile, "Do you feel that this goddess Inanna is a stranger?" "I think I've heard of her before, but also not," Lu Qing replied embarrassedly. "This is a tourist spot added by a fairy at the last minute. I didn't have time to do my homework. Then I'll change her name, and you will be familiar with her." Yan Zhika pursed her lips and smiled. "What is it?" Lu Qing asked curiously. "Call me Teacher Yan first. Instructor Yan is fine too." The girl turned her head and lifted her chin slightly. Her slender and beautiful neck was faintly discernible under the cover. Lu Qing was amused. "Please give me some pointers, Instructor Yan." "Cough, have you heard of Aphrodite? Venus, have you heard of it? Air, these two names are just the difference between Gu Qinhai's name and Gu Luo's name. Also, have you heard of the Holy Mother?" Yan Zhika raised her hand and said, "One of their prototypes is Inanna. She's really something." Lu Qing was dumbfounded. After showing off her knowledge, Yan Zhika pursed her lips and pointed at the weathered sculptures, statues and stone pillars. "Come, help me take a picture. I'll ask the tour guide to take a picture of us later." "Okay." Lu Qing took out his digital camera and waited for her to pose. At this moment, a man who claimed to be a staff member came over. He had a unique beard and indicated that he could take a picture of the couple. Knowing that he would be blackmailed if he accepted the offer, Lu Qing shook his head firmly without any hesitation. When Lu Qing pressed the shutter, the staff member suddenly jumped out and was captured by the camera, leaving behind an image. Then he pestered them and kept asking for money in slang English. Although the couple was not short on money, They were not willing to be forced. Lu Qing looked back at the tour guide and saw him walking over quickly. He reached out his right hand and patted the staff member on the shoulder. In an instant, the staff member felt cold all over. He felt like he was locked in a cold storage at the edge of the desert during the hot season. He couldn't help but shiver. He wanted to open his mouth, but could only hear the chattering of his teeth. He wanted to move but found that his body was stiff and difficult to control. Lu Qing pulled his little fairy away as if nothing had happened, and changed their position to take another picture. He also signaled the tour guide to take care of the rest. The tiger on the ground, who always liked to act tough, was frightened by the encounter just now. He yelled that he wanted to call the police, but didn't dare to make any real moves. He was easily persuaded by the tour guide. After taking a group photo, the young couple held hands and wandered around the ruins of the ancient temple. They talked and laughed, and they were very happy. After visiting the last scenic spot, they returned to the bustling area. Under the tour guide's introduction, they entered a Babula restaurant, which was also a special barbecue restaurant. Here they carefully selected lamb legs and other ingredients and applied pepper, salt, and ingredients recorded in their ancestral secret recipe. The barbecue was fragrant and tender. It's not bad. It's different from what we had in Dika. But I'm still a little sick of it. Yenjika looked at Lu Qing with bright eyes and said in a slightly aggrieved tone, "Now is all barbecue barbecue barbecue. If not, it's just pancakes and bread. Why didn't they develop other methods? China's food culture has a long history and rich methods." Dika was the capital of Nile. It was the couple's first stop upon arrival. They spent 3 days there and saw many ancient relics, pyramids and mummies. That's why we have to lower our standards when traveling. Lu Qing looked at the girl with a smile and said, "We still have one more stop in Nile before going to the grasslands. It's definitely different from here." Yeah. Yenjika's eyes flickered. She chuckled and said, "I'm thinking, if you were the domineering CEO, what would you say just now?" Lu Qing thought for a while and held back his laughter. "I'll contract the kitchen here and make you a bowl of egg fried rice. The eggs must be laid by Xioshan's free-range chickens and flown over. Not domineering enough. You should buy this restaurant and fly in a few chefs to make Chinese food." Yenjika looked up and dissed the domineering CEO in high spirits. After eating barbecue and drinking the specialty drinks, the couple returned to the hotel. One rested while the other pondered over the next day's itinerary. Half an hour later, Yenjika stood up, against all odds, and got into a stance. She calmed herself down until her godly will was complete. Her mind and body were at peace. She retracted her qi and blood, allowing her force and spirit to collapse inward and condense into a small ball in her lower abdomen. At the end of July, she understood the meaning of retract. Under Lu Cheng's guidance, she began to break through to the Dan stage. This was a process, not a node. Lu Cheng had used the opposition and rotation of his supernatural abilities to balance and form the Dan. This time, he let Yenjika use her supernatural ability of earth as yang and her own power as yin. Under the control of her spirit and the replenishment of her qi and blood, they opposed each other, rotated, and balanced. Gradually, there were signs of success in the Dan stage. In another 7 or 8 days, the girl should be able to use this method to completely enter the Dan stage. While Yenjika was cultivating, Lu Cheng was not idle either. He pressed his right hand on his wife's back and used the ice mirror to listen to her subtle changes. He compared them with the experience he could recall in order to find the key. Over and over again, even though Yenjika was extremely passionate about her dream of reaching the Dan stage, she still couldn't overcome the exhaustion of her body without using the swordsman formula and the wholeness formula. As the night deepened, she lay on the bed and didn't want to move. "I'm sweating all over," she said with satisfaction. "But I don't want to move at all. I don't want to take a shower." She just wanted to lie there comfortably and be massaged by Cheng. "You'll feel better if you take a hot shower." Lu Cheng smiled and massaged her. "Didn't you see the notice from the hotel? There's going to be a power outage later. There won't be any hot water. Maybe there will be a water outage too." No. Yenjika turned her body and shook her sweaty hair. She buried her face in the pillow with a look of non-cooperation. Who's the one who always urges me to take a shower? Who loves to take a shower the most? Luqing laughed. I'm going to stink you to death later. Yenjika replied hatefully. I don't care. I'm just worried that you can't accept it. Luqing laughed and helped his little fairy to turn around. He saw her squinting her dark eyes and quietly observing the outside world. Humph. Yenjika pouted. If there's a power outage, you're in charge of the hot water. If there's no water, you'll freeze and turn into water. Aren't you known as a multifunctional household robot? I have to save my ice force in case there's no air conditioning at night. Luqing explained and tried to pull Yenjika up. No, no, no. Yenjika shook her head like a rattledrum. She lifted her right foot and pressed it against Luqing. She even used a repulsive force. Luqing easily broke through the repulsive force and grabbed her foot. He stretched out his fingers and scratched it a few times. His little fairy wriggled like a fish and laughed shyly and angrily. She hurriedly withdrew her foot and sat up abruptly. After playing around for a while, the atmosphere gradually heated up. Suddenly, the girl gasped and said, Shower first, shower first. Who said she didn't want to shower just now? Luqing said vaguely. Don't you know? Don't you know that girls are fickle? Yenjika resisted with all her might. Then go shower. Luqing carried the girl in his arms. No, no. I don't want to shower with you. The topic seemed to return to the beginning, but it gradually quieted down. After some time, the couple lay on the bed. One was physically and mentally satisfied, while the other was smiling like a peach blossom. I'm thinking of a technical problem. Luqing said thoughtfully. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. It must be extremely dirty. Yenjika closed her eyes and shook her head. I'm talking about your supernatural ability. Luqing snickered, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the girl. I already said I'm not listening. Your mind is so dirty. In the midst of their banter, they suddenly heard a loud boom. It seemed like an explosion had happened somewhere in the city. Immediately after, firecracker-like sounds came from all over the city. What's wrong? Luqing sat up. Yenjika picked up her phone and saw a message from the embassy. It said, You're in trouble. Nile is in turmoil, suspected to be a coup d'état. All Chinese citizens are advised not to go out blindly. If necessary, please head to the embassy, consulate, or Chinese company's premises and wait for evacuation. At the same time, Luqing also received the message. The couple looked at each other, feeling a little unreal. Something big happened just like that? P.S. For the sake of harmony, the war-torn zones and their surroundings do not correspond to the real world. Please don't make wild guesses. Chapter 592. Without much confusion, Luqing cleared his mind and said calmly to Yenjika, Cuckoo, I'll call the embassy to confirm the situation so that we won't lose contact. Pack your luggage. Put the important and necessary things in your backpack. Don't bring too many clothes, just 2 sets will do. Throw the rest in your suitcase. And be prepared to throw them away if you can't take them with you. The message he just sent included the embassy's landline. It was the first time for Yenjika to encounter such a situation, so it was natural for her to be flustered. However, after hearing Luqing's calm tone and feeling his confident attitude, she quickly calmed down. She seemed to have a plan in mind. She nodded gently and answered, Okay. She put on her clothes and walked quickly to the sofa. She opened the suitcase and took out the necessary items. Luqing held his phone and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. While looking at the burning buildings outside, he dialed the embassy's landline. Maybe it was because there were too many people calling back after receiving the message, but all 3 landlines were busy. He couldn't get through, so he decided to look for his master. Hey brat, I didn't expect you to experience this kind of thing. Back in the days when I was in the war-torn zones. Geezer bragged casually. The corner of Luqing's mouth twitched. He almost couldn't control himself and interrupted this unreliable old man. After saying a few words, Shi Jiangwo smacked his lips and said, East of the Nile is the war-torn zone. It's going to connect together. This old man was still thinking about when I should send you there for training. Great, I've encountered it myself. Okay, I won't say more. I'll ask for the military's contact number in Nile, not the embassy's. Won't say more. That's called not saying more. Lu Qing face-bombed and cursed silently. After waiting for more than a minute, Geezer sure sent a message with the phone number. The gunshots outside were getting louder and louder. It was as if the whole city was being fried. The lights around them flickered on and off, making the hotel look like an isolated island in the middle of a vast ocean. Lu Qing had been through a lot. Under such circumstances, he remained calm and composed. He calmly called the military personnel sent to him. Hello, who is this? After the call was connected, the person on the other side asked in English vigilantly. Lu Qing wanted to imitate the Dragon King's simple, I'm Qin Qitao, and introduce himself. But considering his own popularity, he had to spend a little more effort. I'm Lu Qing, a disciple of the Ice God sect. I'm currently traveling in Nile with my girlfriend. I couldn't contact the embassy, so I got your number through my master. Heaven-shaking roar? The other side asked in surprise and delight. Obviously, they had heard of this heavenly son of heaven. I won't be happy with your answer. Lu Qing complained to himself. Yes, what happened to Nile? What should we do? The military personnel pondered for a moment before replying. Tonight's incident happened very suddenly. There weren't any demonstrations as a prelude. The information we have gathered isn't comprehensive enough. So far, we can only confirm one thing. Many tribes in Nile have formed anti-government armed forces and are fighting fiercely with the Central Army. According to reliable sources, more than 5 brigades of the Central Army have already defected. There are quite a few mighty ones with physical invulnerability as well as many Inhumans. He paused for a moment before adding, this is rather strange. In Nile, the pharaoh has a very high reputation. Most of the mighty ones are willing to listen to his orders. If he were to make a speech on television, things wouldn't be so chaotic. In the end, it's as if the pharaoh has gone missing. After a while, the military personnel returned to the main topic. With your strength, there shouldn't be any problems as long as you aren't targeted. Where are you currently? Tetons, Lu Qing replied succinctly. That's a little out of the way. There aren't any projects nearby. The military personnel pondered for a few seconds before continuing. Currently, there are 2 paths. The first is to head north along the Nile River and rendezvous with the workers of a few enterprises at Kukhang. Then head towards Dika. Once you reach Dika, you can evacuate via plane or ship. If this path isn't accessible, you can head northeast to the port city of Fartuat at the edge of the Sea of Death. We will coordinate with ships to pick you up. However, don't be anxious. Perhaps the chaos will die down by daybreak. I will inform you if we decide to evacuate. Lu Qing had a plan in mind. He replied calmly, okay. Putting down his phone, he listened to the sparse gunshots. He turned to Yenjika and saw that she had already moved the important items into 2 backpacks, one big and one small. The rest was left in the trolley box. She would take what she could and leave what she couldn't. Let me give it a try. Lu Qing comforted his little fairy with a smile. What do you want to try? Yenjika was confused. Lu Qing didn't answer. He walked to the side, carried his luggage, and twisted his body on the spot. He launched an elbow strike and threw a punch, causing the air to crackle. Not bad. It doesn't affect my movements. I don't need to change my fighting style. He nodded in satisfaction. Indeed, I have to give it a try. Yenjika's pink lips parted slightly. She had a look of realization mixed with annoyance. Then, she followed Lu Qing's example and carried a small black backpack. She exercised her fists and legs to get used to the feeling of something swaying behind her back. I'm a little nervous, but also a little excited. She pursed her lips and nodded slightly. She had always wanted to travel the world with her sword. However, she was still a little scared when something really happened. Lu Qing chuckled. There wasn't a hint of worry in his eyes. It might not be the worst development. The military wants us to wait and see. Could take a nap. Don't be in a hurry to use the wholeness formula. Rest up and prepare for what comes next. What about you? Yenjika asked instinctively. Me? I'm still in good spirits. I'll check the terrain first and be on guard against possible disturbances outside. I'll take a nap after you get enough sleep, Luqing replied in his usual tone. All right. At times like this, Yanjika didn't try to persuade or argue. She obediently followed his instructions and lay on the bed with her clothes on. She didn't want to waste time. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. After 2 minutes, she opened a slit and said timidly, I can't sleep. I can't even enter meditation. My mind is full of messy thoughts. Luqing shook his head and chuckled. He sat beside her and reached out to massage her temples. He kept chanting, confrontation, confrontation, confrontation. The atmosphere softened and the surroundings became quiet. Yanjika slowly relaxed her tension. Her eyelids started to get heavy. She mumbled, Cheng, I feel like my mother is singing a lullaby to me. Empress Dowager knows how to sing a lullaby. Luqing asked casually. No. Yanjika replied with a smile. No. Then why do you say it's like? Luqing was amused and surprised. Anyway, it's like, if she sings it, it should feel like this. Yanjika emphasized and slowly fell asleep. When she fell asleep, Luqing looked outside and listened to the surroundings. He also searched and downloaded a detailed map of Nile before the internet was disconnected. Amidst the occasional gunshots and human voices, he thought of something. He called the hired tour guide and asked him to rent a car. Without the unlimited energy supply of Jindan, using a car instead of walking could effectively conserve energy. This could be the difference between life and death at a critical moment. The tour guide explained that things would calm down soon. Besides, there was no place to rent a car in the middle of the night. He would come with the driver at dawn. At around 4 in the morning, Luqing heard noises approaching. The gunshots were getting clearer and clearer. He quickly woke Yanjika up and told her to hurry up and recover. Yanjika's hazy eyes quickly cleared up. She soon looked like she was ready for a battle. She didn't look like she had just woken up. Gunshots approached and glass shattered. Orders and shouts came from the bottom floor of the hotel. Luqing put on his backpack and listened carefully. The rebels are looting and plundering. They haven't hurt anyone yet. If we fight head-on, we might become the main target and be targeted by the rebels in the entire city. Yanjika put on her backpack and analyzed. Yeah, we don't have to do anything. Let's hide and figure out the situation first. Luqing looked around and said, when the rebels are about to reach this floor, we'll climb through the window to the bottom. They probably won't come back after plundering this place once. Yeah. Yanjika nodded vigorously. Luqing looked at the thumb-sized cars on the ground and asked Yanjika with a smile. Are you scared? No. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm almost at the dance stage. Yanjika raised her chin and said, besides, we've already jumped buildings before. While they were talking, they heard a mixture of local dialect and English at the elevator entrance and the emergency exit. Heavy and messy footsteps could be heard clearly. Luqing and Yanjika looked at each other and opened the ventilation window. With a push of their hands, they squeezed out easily and stood on the narrow protrusion. His feet seemed to be embedded in the concrete. He reached out to hold the girl's delicate hand and helped her flip over. Then he held Yanjika's waist and jumped and pressed down, landing firmly on the protruding point of the next floor. He was so precise that there was no error. Yanjika exerted force on her wrist and pushed open the closed window. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the crooked men and women, who were wearing nothing but bathrobes, she jumped in. Luqing followed her effortlessly. He and Little Fairy quickly moved to the lower floor and randomly found an empty room to wait. After more than half an hour, the rebels finished plundering and left in high spirits. They didn't even care that there were only suitcases and no guests in the room. There must be rats who know how to dig holes. It's a little chaotic. Let's go to the lobby to find other guests and see who drove here. We'll try to form a group and evacuate to Kukang as soon as possible. Luqing made a prompt decision, without waiting for the military's notice. That's what I think too. Yanjika chimed in without hesitation. The two went down to the lobby and saw many foreign tourists gathered. They were frantically discussing the situation and solutions. Luqing was about to go up and talk when he suddenly heard a car coming at high speed. The car screeched to a halt at the entrance. He took a step back and stood in front of the girl. Through the glass, Luqing saw a group of Nile soldiers in military uniforms with guns spread out and seal off the hotel. Why are they here again? He muttered subconsciously. Yenjika pondered for a few seconds and said, "This shows that the situation is very chaotic. The rebels and government forces are scattered and have no contact with each other. Those who came later don't even know that this place has been plundered. Does this mean that even if we go overboard, we won't be surrounded by a large force?" Luqing said thoughtfully. "Yes." Yenjika nodded solemnly. At this moment, the hotel door was pushed open. A strong and burly officer walked in majestically, surrounded by armed soldiers. He wasn't holding a gun, but a scimitar. After looking around, he said coldly, "Take them all away." Chapter 593. The moment the officer with the scimitar gave the order, the soldiers behind swarmed in and spread out, surrounding the crowd. The black and heavy muzzles of their guns were leveled at them like evil and terrifying eyes. The foreign tourists were so frightened that they lost their voices and dared not move. Not all of the soldiers remained in place. 90% of them passed by and came to the elevator. Half of them took the elevator while the other half climbed the safety passageway. Their footsteps were heavy and messy, as though they were going to search floor by floor and not miss a single guest. The remaining soldiers each took up a position and signaled the tourists in the lobby to hold their heads and squat down, waiting for them to gather and leave. Seeing that there weren't many enemies left, a blond Caucasian man mustered his courage and shouted, "I'm an American citizen. Our consul is rushing over from Kukhang." The United States had an embassy and 3 consulates in Nile. Hearing the shouts and seeing that the hostages were eager to give it a try, the officer with the scimitar made a gesture with his eyes. "I don't care who you are, squat down." A soldier rushed over, raised the butt of his gun, and smashed it on the blond Caucasian man's back. He screamed in pain and staggered forward. Bam! The soldier kicked the back of his leg with his leather boot, causing the American tourist to kneel heavily on one knee. Not daring to move, he hurriedly raised his hands to hold his head. Oh my God! One by one, the tourists came to terms with the reality. They held their heads and squatted down. Luqing didn't act rashly. To be honest, with his strength he was still worried just now. But now, these people weren't enough. But he had to consider Yenjika and the innocent crowd. If he couldn't end the battle in a short time, Yenjika might be implicated. Even though she was almost at the dance stage, she hadn't experienced life and death battles. If she panicked and made a mistake, it would be a regret that could never be made up for. Luqing squatted down and took the opportunity to look around, taking in the situation. There are 5 soldiers with guns guarding us. They are spread out, so I can't catch all of them in one go. There are 2 soldiers at the stairs and 2 at the elevator. There are another 2 outside the main entrance. As for the rest, I don't know. That military officer has his own way of walking. His combat strength should be on par with the more powerful ordinary dance stage. Luqing thought for a while and said to Yenjika, who was also squatting beside him, "This is different from the rebel army. They are spaced so well that it's impossible to attack 2 of them at the same time. Also, they can easily form a crossfire. They seem to have received formal training and aren't a mob." "I think so too. Did they betray us, or did they take advantage of the chaos to do something?" "It's weird," Yenjika replied in a low voice. Luqing nodded slightly and whispered in his wife's ear, "Things are a little strange. We can't follow them. If we get into a situation that we can't solve, we'll be in trouble. Cool, I'll find a chance to attack that officer later. Hide behind that pillar, don't attract attention, and avoid stray bullets." 2. Bye? But, she muttered to herself, "I'm almost at the dance stage. It's not a problem for me to deal with 2 or 3 soldiers. It's mainly because you don't have experience and make mistakes. Once we leave the hotel, I'll watch over you and you can take your time. Later, if a soldier's attention isn't attracted by me and wants to attack you, the first thing you need to do is to use your supernatural ability to get rid of his gun. The second thing you need to do is be ruthless. Don't think about anything else. This was a precautionary plan. It could effectively avoid mistakes and prevent Ko from being hurt by the gun in close combat. Okay. Hearing that she had a mission and wasn't a burden, Yenjika was no longer depressed. Her fighting spirit was aroused. She repeated silently, "Get rid of the gun. Be ruthless. Get rid of the gun. Be ruthless." As a top student, she had already started to plan how to use her supernatural ability in martial arts to get rid of the gun. Seeing that all the hostages were squatting down, the soldier who knocked over the American tourists walked back to his original position. When he passed by a mixed-race tourist with exaggerated breasts, he extended his leg to feel them and let out a vulgar laugh. "You." The female tourist was angry, but she didn't dare to say anything. "Oh, be careful. We'll talk about this after we bring all of them back," reminded the officer with the scimitar. "Talk about this? How can we talk about this?" Many tourists in the lobby suddenly understood. Their bodies started to tremble uncontrollably, and they cried out loud. It was as if they could already foresee the tragic ending. Bam! The soldier who was reprimanded fired a shot at the window on the other side. He shouted angrily, "Shut up." At this moment, Lu Qing transmitted a message to Yenjika. Now, flames and frost rose from the surface of his body. Suddenly, a crimson fireball and a crystal cold light swirled around each other. The fireball and cold light instantly disintegrated into 9 balls. As Lu Qing leaped, they shot towards the 5 soldiers, the stairs, and the elevator. They were like arrows released from a fully drawn bow. After obtaining the complete set of cultivation techniques, Lu Qing didn't waste it. He combined them with his own techniques and developed several application techniques for Ice Force and Fire Force. Boom! The nearest soldier was smashed in the face by the fireball. His head was badly bruised and charred. He threw away his gun in pain and fell to the ground, struggling. Gradually he fell silent. Of the 2 soldiers who were slightly closer to him, one of them had his arm unnaturally twisted by the explosion and rolled to the side twice. The other one was covered in a layer of ice. His eyes were confused, his movements were slow, and his whole body was stiff, like a rusty robot. The other 2 soldiers and the guards at the stairs and elevator reacted in time due to the distance. They rolled or dodged skillfully. Yenjika followed the plan. She supported herself with her hand and flipped to the back of the pillar on the right. Lu Qing didn't care about anything else. He landed not far from the officer with a single leap. A flaming red scimitar was coming at him. The officer's face was cold. He expanded his back muscles and arms, as if he was going to cut through metal with one strike. Lu Qing's body paused. He gathered his qi and blood and changed his rhythm. Then he took a step diagonally, shook out his right arm, and punched the side of the officer's scimitar. Bam! 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 The place where he was originally standing was filled with bullets and sparks. It was the hurried counterattack of the remaining soldiers. They didn't dare to shoot directly at Lu Qing's body. They were afraid that if he dodged, they would accidentally hurt the officer. Bam! Lu Qing's body grew taller and bigger, like a god descending from the sky. He punched the side of the officer's scimitar fiercely. Crack! Under the punch, the scimitar broke like a piece of paper and hit the officer's shoulder, breaking his collarbone into 2 pieces. He couldn't maintain his cold face and staggered with a twisted expression. Bam! Lu Qing reached out with his left hand and grabbed the other arm of the officer. Then he poured the ice spirit force into the officer, making him stiffen and shiver. A grab followed by a press, he pushed the officer back 2 steps. Stars were splattered on the ground behind him. With a pull of his hand and a turn of his body, Lu Qing hid behind the officer and shouted in English, "Stop! Put down your guns!" At this moment, Yenjika saw a soldier circling to the side of Lu Qing's temple secretly. Her heart tightened, and she instinctively activated the plan. The muzzle of the soldier's gun suddenly became heavy and dropped to the ground. Then, a slender and well-proportioned leg kicked the gun away with a bang. Yenjika's mind was filled with what she had just repeated. Without thinking, she stomped on the ground, turned around and kicked again. Bam! Her left leg tightened into a whip and whipped between the soldier's legs. Poof! The sound of something breaking was heard. The soldier's eyes rolled back and he fainted. His lower body was quickly soaked. Lu Qing shouted again, "Stop! At the same time he held, the frozen officer encircled him. The soldiers and survivors who rushed in from the gate stopped and didn't dare to move. Luqing looked around and said, "Put down your guns." He made a gesture of breaking the officer's throat. The soldiers hesitated and threatened, but what they got in return was the officer's broken arm. Thus, they threw away their guns without a leader. Luqing ordered them to make way and shouted to the rest of the tourists, "Hurry up and leave." The group of tourists seemed to have woken up from a dream. They even forgot to thank him, and hurried out of the door. In twos and threes, they found a car and left. Some of them knew that it was chaotic outside and didn't dare to run around. They gathered outside and waited for Luqing and Yanjika to come out. Luqing carried the speechless officer, and approached his wife. He glanced at the unconscious soldier who was bleeding and bleeding. You asked me to be more ruthless." Yanjika explained blankly and absent-mindedly. "Well done." Luqing praised sincerely. He held the officer hostage and brought Yanjika out of the hotel slowly. They got into the rough jeep. After waiting for a while, when the remaining soldiers came down with the other tourists, he made another threat to let them go and let everyone leave separately. Next, he didn't try to unite the foreigners who stayed behind. Instead, he ordered Yanjika to drive to the north. If there were people who could and were willing to follow, let them follow. There was no need to delay. To him, the safety of his little ferry was the most important thing. Tetan's City, in the government building. A young general with blue eyes and a thick beard finished listening to the report, and picked up the hotel's check-in documents. "Luqing! Luqing!" The general roared. "Are those intelligence officers drowned in donkey dung? Why didn't they monitor and report such people entering the country?" An official beside him smiled bitterly. "General Ferrio, many of them have been transferred. They don't have enough manpower. Moreover, everyone's mind isn't on this. Hope everything goes smoothly." The young general prayed and stood up suddenly. "I'll handle this." After driving for a while in the dark, Luqing remembered that the jeep might have a positioning device. He was about to find a way to change vehicles and interrogate the officer when he received a message from the Chinese military. "Things are complicated. Evacuate as soon as possible. Follow the original 2 routes. There are still 4 tourists from our country in Tetons. If it's convenient, I hope you can bring them along. They are currently hiding in the ground floor car park of the Salagu supermarket." Chapter 594. Stepping on the officer, Luqing read the message to Yanjika. Before he could ask, Yanjika looked straight ahead and turned the steering wheel. "Go." "Huh." Luqing was confused. "Don't you want to discuss whether to go or not with me?" Yanjika drove the car fast in the middle of the night. "My answer is yes." At this point, she pursed her lips and revealed a faint self-deprecating smile as she said, "If the situation was dangerous, I definitely wouldn't agree to go. But now I can handle it. Isn't it natural to pick up a few people on the way and help my compatriots? I have you by my side and my strength is not bad. But when I encounter this kind of situation, I still feel panic, confusion, and fear. Although I slowly calm down, I can't be as rational as usual. Some of the words I said, and some of the reactions I showed before became my unreasonable self that I don't like. I'm like this, let alone them. If I put myself in their shoes, they must be very scared, terrified, and uneasy at this time. They really want help and rescue. Sigh, I've always said that there's a difference between those who are close to me and those who are distant from me, and that I'm more indifferent to those who are further away from me. I can pity them, but I definitely won't worry about them. Haha, now it seems that I'm not that selfish after all. Luqing listened quietly, then chuckled and said, "This is already very good." He pressed the keyboard and replied to the military personnel, "I'll take them with me." After sending the message, he remembered his worries and hurriedly told Yanjika that the military jeep might have a positioning device, so that she could prepare to change cars. In the middle of the night, without a key, can you open the door and drive the car? Yanjika asked. I can't. Luqing was almost speechless. I haven't learned this skill. In movies and TV series, there are often scenes of directly pulling the wires and connecting the ignition to start the car. But I haven't tried it and I don't know if it works. No wonder the seniors said that it's always good to have more skills in the martial arts world. At this time, Yenjuka rolled her eyes and said, "Actually, the positioning device is easy to solve. My supernatural ability is similar to a magnetic field, so I can interfere with it. Will it also interfere with the driving of the car?" Lu Qing deliberated and asked. "I don't know about that." Yenjuka was silent for a few seconds before she gave her opinion. "Why don't you give it a try?" "Okay." Lu Qing was ready. After a while, the jeep was stable again. Yenjuka said happily, "No problem. That's good." Lu Qing wiped his non-existent cold sweat and began to use the army formula and his aura, trying to break the officer's defenses and get useful information from him. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win every battle. After driving for a while, Yenjuka said faintly, "Chung, how do you get to that Shalagu?" Lu Qing was stunned for a moment and found it hard to answer. After a few seconds of silence, he said with relief, "I downloaded the map." In the corner of the underground parking lot of Saraga Supermarket, Ma Chaoyang hid in the shadows, using the support pillars as cover. He was a veteran backpacker and was currently on an experiential trip around Nile. Behind the SUV beside him was a family of 3. They set off from Dika and traveled all the way to Tetons. Due to the invasion of the hotel by the rebels, they took the opportunity to escape to a nearby area and met Ma Chaoyang. Under his suggestion, they hid in the parking lot and waited for the chaos to pass. "What should we do? Will it be chaotic for a long time?" Zhou Yong, a middle-aged man with a beer belly and a parted hairstyle, asked in a low voice. There was still a lingering panic in his voice. His wife Li Xiaoyun, whose hair was in a mess, hugged her daughter, Zhou Xianying, who was only 11 or 12 years old. She kept looking left and right, afraid that the group of barbaric, vicious, and inhumane Nile soldiers would jump out from any corner. In the process of escaping from the hotel, if it weren't for a few rebels attracting attention, they wouldn't have escaped so smoothly. At the same time, they also witnessed the bloody scene of the rebels being beaten to death and injured. They also witnessed the tragic scene of a few ladies being pinned down and violated by the rebels. Born and raised in a normal and stable country, it was already good enough that they didn't break down after seeing such a scene. They only reacted a little too aggressively. Ma Chaoyang had passed by the border of the war-torn zones before and could be considered experienced. He shook his phone and said, "I've contacted the embassy. They said they will think of something. There will definitely be a way." "Okay." Zhou Yong calmed down a little when he thought of having backup. At this moment, Ma Chaoyang's phone, which showed signs of disconnection from time to time, rang. There was a message. He looked down and a surprised smile appeared on his face. He blurted out, "The embassy has replied. They said that someone is coming to pick us up. We will retreat to Kukhang and meet up with the main force. They told us not to wander around and to wait here patiently." As he said these words, he couldn't help but tear up. It felt good to not be abandoned. It felt good to have someone to worry about and help. It was like being alone outside all year round. At the most difficult time, he suddenly received a call from his mother. Okay. Zhou Yong let out a long sigh, as if he had seen the light in the darkness and grabbed onto hope. He turned to his wife and daughter and said, "Don't be afraid. The embassy has sent someone over. It will be fine." "Okay." Li Xiaoyun and Zhou Xianying nodded in unison, as if they had found their backbone. The waiting time was equally unbearable. They didn't dare to move, so they could only look at their watches and change their posture. It was as if they had lice. Why aren't they here yet? Li Xiaoyun couldn't help but mutter in the quiet underground parking lot. It's chaotic outside. They won't be here so soon. Ma Chaoyang was also anxious, but he still replied to calm the atmosphere and comfort himself. At this moment, the elevator in the distance arrived and a few footsteps were heard. "They're here," Zhou Xianying exclaimed in surprise, but her father covered her mouth. Zhou Yong shook his head at her with lingering fear, indicating that they should wait a little longer. Earlier in the hotel, some tourists thought that the police had arrived and rushed out excitedly, but they were caught by the rebels. As for the outcome, it was not hard to imagine. Tap, tap, tap. The heavy footsteps drew closer and a voice spoke in unfamiliar English. "Where is your car?" "In front. It's right in front. Most of my money and jewelry are there." A low female voice answered in a panic. Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the others' hearts sank. They instinctively curled up into a ball, trying to hide as much as possible. Through the windshields on the opposite side, they could vaguely see 4 people dressed in rebel uniforms escorting a pretty white woman to the side of a crimson sedan. One of them seemed to be the leader. He stood alone by the side, while the other escorts occasionally rubbed the white woman's chest and lower body. In the compartment in front of the passenger seat, the white woman pointed at the crimson sedan with her chin. A rebel soldier took out the car key and pressed it, unlocking the door. Then he went around the sedan and opened the door, trying to take something out of the compartment. The soldier who seemed to be the leader moved closer to the sedan to prevent his subordinates from taking the opportunity to hide the valuables. The rest of the escorts couldn't help but look at the opposite side. Seeing this, the white woman suddenly moved. She stomped her right foot to the side and pressed the tip of a soldier's foot. At the same time, she half-squatted and swung her left elbow backward, hitting another soldier in the crotch. "Ouch! Ouch!" One of the soldiers hugged his foot while the other covered his crotch, forgetting to shoot. The white woman immediately turned around and ran quickly, trying to escape. Bang! 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 After a few gunshots, she stopped and fell to the ground. The back of her head was blown open by the bullets. Red and white blood flowed all over the ground, accompanied by the victim's normal incontinence. The soldier who was the leader blew on the front end of the large-caliber pistol, like he did in foreign movies. He was very pleased with himself. He had received formal training, and was a rare sharpshooter in the tribe. At this time, Zhou Yong covered the mouths of his wife and daughter tightly, his face full of horror. The scene just now almost made him cry out involuntarily. "No!" The soldier who was searching the sedan raised his head in frustration. "That bitch!" He looked at the dead white woman and muttered softly, "What a pity!" The leader's face darkened as he waited for his 2 injured subordinates to recover. To Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, Li Xiaoyan and Zhou Xianying, these few short minutes felt like years. They practically counted every second that passed, and even the sound of their breathing became soft, afraid that they would be discovered if they were just a little bit louder. After a while, except for the soldier whose crotch was injured, the rest of the rebel soldiers began to smash the windows of the surrounding cars. They searched for anything left inside, causing waves of alarms to ring. Perhaps they were tired, or perhaps they felt that this was not a big gain, and that they might as well rob other places. The group of soldiers left the parking lot not long after, leaving behind a silence filled with the smell of blood. Ma Chaoyang and Zhou Yong looked at each other, exhaled and collapsed. They did not know when this nightmare would end. At this time, they heard the familiar Hua Nation language, and they heard standard Mandarin. "Ma Chaoyang? Zhou Yong? The people from the embassy are here? Is the rescue team here?" Ma Chaoyang and the others jumped up and ran out. At this moment, the Hua Nation language that they used to find so ordinary was like the sound of nature from the light, so intimate and so pleasant to the ears. When they came out of the hiding place, they saw a couple. They were very young and looked more like a college couple. The girl was beautiful and elegant, like a light source in the darkness. The young man was chiseled and calm. Although he was not a soldier, the latter had a calming and comforting power. Zhou Yong, Li Xiaoyan, and the others felt like they had just escaped death. They instinctively said, "You." Lu Qing interrupted them and said with a smile, "We are from the military. We came here according to the embassy's instructions. Don't waste any more time. Get out of here as soon as possible." Hearing this, Ma Chaoyang and the others could no longer hold it in. Their vision blurred. "P.S. Zhou Yong, please recommend me. Damn, I'm allergic. The punctual update record I've maintained for several days is gone." Chapter 595. Lu Qing didn't waste any time and asked directly, "Do you have a car? With so many people, it would be troublesome to squeeze into a single jeep." "No." Ma Chaoyang wiped his eyes and shook his head. He was a typical backpacker who liked to hitchhike and ride with the wind. "Our rented car is at the hotel. It's chaotic there, very chaotic. Zhou Yong explained with lingering fear. Before he could finish, Zhou Xianying pointed into the distance and said with a sharp voice, "There's a car there. The keys are on the ground, on the ground." She was talking about the crimson car, whose owner had been killed by the soldiers. Lu Qing glanced over and saw the corpse and the half-open car door. He immediately understood what was going on. He didn't say anything more and changed the topic. "Which one of you knows how to drive?" "Me." Zhou Yong swallowed his saliva and raised his hand. "Me too. Ma Chaoyang occasionally went on road trips." Lu Qing nodded. Just as he was about to let them take turns driving the crimson car, he suddenly had an idea. He deliberated for a few seconds and looked at Yin Zhika beside him. "Cool, let's change cars. That jeep is for military use and is too eye-catching. It's easy to be spotted by drones and the like. Besides, maintaining your supernatural ability will consume a lot of energy. No one knows what will happen next. It's better to preserve as much strength as possible." He didn't say this behind Zhou Yong's back, so that they could quickly understand the situation and not make stupid mistakes because they thought they were safe now. "Yeah, that's what I thought too." Yin Zhika's eyes turned up. "Let's all squeeze into one car. We can barely fit in now. One car is more flexible, and we won't have to wait for this and that and waste time for nothing." "Okay." Lu Qing nodded in agreement and ordered Ma Chaoyang and the others to get in first. He himself returned to the jeep and knocked out the officer who had nearly lost control of his bladder. This seemingly cold guy had already broken down under the continuous assault of Lu Cheng's army formula and his own aura. He told them everything he knew. He belonged to the local government forces and didn't betray them. He was assigned by his superior to lead his direct troops to the hotel to hunt down foreign tourists. Regarding this mission, the instructions he received were, "Don't worry about international repercussions. Shoot when you need to shoot, kill when you need to kill." Both Lu Cheng and Yin Zhika could smell the strangeness of the car, so it was natural for them to change cars. "No matter what Nile is up to, the most important thing is for us to safely evacuate." After he was done here, Lu Qing came to the crimson sedan. He saw Zhou Yong, Ma Chaoyang, Li Xiaoyan, and Zhou Xianying were all tactfully squeezed in the back row. No one dared to go to the front. The scare and ordeal just now had made them dumbstruck and obedient like quails. The little girl was sitting on her mother's lap on the far left. Zhou Yong was in the middle, and Ma Chaoyang was on the right. Yin Zhika had already gotten the key and started the car. Lu Qing glanced around, picked up 2 shells and sat in the passenger seat. After he put down his backpack, Yin Zhika glanced at the map on her phone and said, "From here, we can go north to Route 76. It goes all the way to Kukhang. It's the shortest and best route for us to retreat to. However, I'm worried that too many people will take this route and will be intercepted or robbed by a large force. I want to take a detour and take Route 63 to the east. After leaving the city, turn to Route 92 and enter Route 76 at Pori Town. That's already quite far from Teton City, so there shouldn't be any problems. If we receive any bad news on the way, we can still easily turn from Route 92 to Route 71 and head to the port city of Fartuat at the edge of the Sea of Death." While driving here, she had already thought about the route of retreat. Lu Qing thought for a moment and gave her a thumbs up. "Not bad. Let's do that." Yin Zhika, who was praised, felt more confident and calm. She drove the car smoothly on a dark and narrow road without any street lights. The surrounding buildings were sometimes tall and sometimes short. Occasionally, gunshots could be heard. Sometimes, flames could be seen. It made one feel the existence of chaos and the beauty of peace from the bottom of their heart. There weren't many cars on Route 63. The girl, who couldn't help but exceed the speed limit, put her skills to good use. It was as though she was driving a crimson bolt of lightning. Lu Qing glanced at the rearview mirror and saw quite a few cars following them. These were some of the foreign tourists in the hotel. In times of crisis, they chose to follow the strong because the embassies and consulates couldn't take care of them for the time being. In times of chaos, this was the instinct of living things. They've become a motorcade. Yin Zhika also looked into the mirror and said with a smile and a sigh, "I don't have a choice. I can't just go down and release a blast of Emperor Yen force to stop them from following us, right? Lu Cheng sighed as he rolled the bullet shell he picked up earlier between his fingers. He couldn't be that cold and heartless. He didn't have the heart of stone. It's nothing. It's only a 3-hour drive to Kukhang. That's a big city. There will be aid from their country there, said the girl calmly as she looked straight at the road. Just as she was about to drive out of Tetons, an obstacle suddenly appeared in front of them. A team of soldiers was setting up checkpoints to check. What should we do? Asked Yenjika instinctively. Li Xiaoyan and the rest in the back suddenly tensed up. Lu Cheng said with his usual expression, roll down the window. Don't stop. Charge through. Okay. After Yenjika rolled down the windows on both sides, she stepped on the accelerator pedal to the maximum, making the car let out a loud thud. Virum. The car was like an arrow released from a bow and approached the checkpoint with a whoosh. The group of soldiers panicked at first, then raised their guns. Lu Cheng extended his right hand out of the window and rubbed his index and middle fingers together. The bright yellow bullet shell immediately flew out. It was so fast that it looked like it had just left the barrel of a gun and created dazzling sparks. Bam! The bullet shell penetrated the forehead of a soldier and exploded with a boom. It was as though a cannon had struck this place. Countless bones flew out along with the red light. The rest of the people were screaming in pain. They covered their heads and scurried away like rats, showing the true colors of an unorganized and untrained rebel army. Kacha. The car crashed through the railing and wanted to speed through. An officer calmed himself down and took the opportunity to shoot at the driver's seat. With a casual flick of his left wrist, another shell flew out. This time, it was faster and more urgent than the previous one. Boom. The officer was instantly enveloped in red flames. His badly damaged body scattered around. The crimson car rushed through the checkpoint and drove into the long road of yellow sand, followed by one car after another. The team that had lost their officer retreated back to the base in a sorry state. They saw their superior's superior, Brigadier General Ferrio. This young man with eyes as blue as the ocean and a face full of mature facial hair led the guards. With his hands behind his back, he patrolled the front of the defeated soldiers. Sir General, this is what happened. The adjutant of the defeated team stepped forward and finished his report. Ferrio nodded slightly. He took a few steps without commenting, then turned and walked towards the helicopter not far away. Halfway through the journey, he nonchalantly instructed the guards, "Don't worry. They killed international friends, which is a serious violation of the law of war, and trampled on humanity. Execute them all." "Yes, Sir General." The captain of the guards saluted. "No. Spare us." The group of defeated soldiers came to their senses. Screams and sounds of machine gun fire filled the air. Ferrio straightened his back and got on the helicopter. He clenched his fist and said, "Let Timu fly to Route 71. We will head to Bori Town and wipe out that accident completely." "Yes, sir." The captain of the guards replied loudly. The crimson car sped through the sky. The outline of the town was faintly discernible. "We're almost there," Li Xiaoyan said happily. They would leave the dark city of Tetons after this. A few more minutes. Ma Chaoyang stretched his neck and realized that his phone had some signal again. He quickly refreshed the message. The situation in Dika is out of control. The rebel army is looting and the government army has started to take on the role of bandits. They killed many tourists. A new superhero has appeared. Ma Chaoyang read out the situation from last night. Superhero? Lu Qing asked in confusion. Isn't that an American trait? Ma Chaoyang explained. It seems that an American tourist was brutally murdered, and this angered a strong man who was traveling in Nile. He took revenge on the government and the rebel army in the form of a superhero. He killed one of their generals, the real generals, Kafir and Mutheo. He called himself Dark Knight Bat. General? The real generals? Lu Cheng and Yenjika looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock and astonishment. Excluding the promotion of the command system, in Nile, general was synonymous with terror grade and physical invulnerability grade. Judging from Ma Chaoyang's tone, he was obviously referring to the latter. 2 physical invulnerability experts had fallen? In just one night, the coup had led to the fall of 2 physical invulnerability experts? In a one-on-one fight between physical invulnerability experts, it was easy to win, but difficult to kill. Was that Dark Knight Bat a taboo-level superhero? Or was he not the only one? Moreover, why would the 2 parties involved in the coup provoke foreigners for no reason? Why was the situation so out of control? Was military discipline completely disrupted? The development of this matter was getting weirder and more exaggerated. We have to evacuate as soon as possible. Lu Cheng and Yin Zheka understood each other's eyes. One sped up the car while the other observed the surroundings. Vroom vroom vroom. The family car was driven like a supercar and flew into the town. There were checkpoints set up by soldiers at the front and a helicopter hovered above. Lu Cheng's eyelids twitched. His instincts told him that there was going to be big trouble. Turn around. No, wait a while more, he said calmly. After a dozen seconds, an off-road vehicle in front of them charged towards the checkpoint, taking advantage of its heavy weight. Amidst the sounds of gunfire, it broke through the barrier. Suddenly, a rocket flew through the air and hit the off-road vehicle with a bang. Boom. The violent explosion stopped the following vehicles in their tracks. Flames billowed like mushrooms. In the helicopter, Ferrio held a cigar and watched the scene leisurely. His military uniform was neat and tidy. Cars turned around frantically. Only then did Yin Zheka move. She blended in with the crowd and didn't attract any attention. At this moment, another beam of fire shot out from the helicopter and hit the back, causing another loud sound and intense fireworks. Everyone, stop your vehicles and be checked one by one, the officer guarding the checkpoint shouted with a loudspeaker. P.S. Looking for recommendation votes. Chapter 596. In the helicopter, Ferrio took a puff of his cigar. He was satisfied to see all the cars stop under the deterrence of the rocket. At this time, his adjutant received a message through a special communication device. He quickly reported, found Cacho. He was abandoned in the underground parking lot of Saragu supermarket. He has a mental breakdown and keeps saying things like, I'm a government soldier. He should have told them everything he knows. Get rid of him. Ferrio raised his right hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. What about Cacho's superior, Markdom, who gave him the order? The adjutant asked cautiously. Ferrio glanced at him coldly. Same. Yes, General. The adjutant didn't say anything else and quickly made the arrangements. When the call ended, he spoke again, full of doubts. Lu must know that this was done by the government army. Although the signal was intermittent, it was still there. The secret should have been leaked. If we kill him now, not only will we not solve the problem, but we will also be suspected and get into big trouble. Ferrio raised his eyelids slightly and looked around at his trusted subordinates. Didn't I tell you the real goal this time? No. The adjutant shook his head. The adjutant shook his head and replied, There's a saying in our tribe that those who don't know anything live longer. Ferrio looked down and saw that a portion of the soldiers at the checkpoint were methodically searching the cars in the queue. Although they still took the belongings, they were more restrained. They also didn't make things difficult for the men and women who passed the checkpoint, allowing them to drive to Kukhang. This calmed the hearts of the fugitives, and they all had the idea of spending money to avoid disaster. The government sent a regular army to hold foreign tourists hostage. They don't prohibit killing, and they intend to silence them and frame the rebels. This is what Cacho knows and can be inferred, right? Ferrio leisurely put the cigar to his mouth. Yes, so we shouldn't find trouble with Lu anymore. We can just push the blame to Markdom and say that he has secretly defected to the rebels, and intends to use this method to slander the government, the adjutant replied after thinking. Then why did I kill Cacho and his soldiers? Wouldn't it be better to keep them alive? Ferrio revealed a faint smile. Think about it. What if the government really intends to frame the rebels? Under this premise, what will you do when something unexpected happens and the secret might be leaked? The adjutant's expression turned solemn. We will kill all the participants and insiders and push the blame to the rebels. This is the most direct and easiest way to think of. However, once there are omissions, such as Lu's existence, Kacho's confession, and the maintenance of communication, things will become troublesome. We can only find a scapegoat internally. Having said that, he looked at Ferio in shock. Sir General, who is our target? Have you joined the rebels? No, in this turmoil, there are no rebels or government forces. There is only the difference between those who are loyal to the pharaoh and those who are against him. Ferio paused. Our target is Satha. General Satha. The adjutant was shocked, and cold sweat instantly appeared on his forehead. This was one of the leaders of the Brotherhood, a figure with real power in the Kuking area, and the Brigadier General's immediate superior. He was a member of the regular army. I am General Satha's subordinate. Everything I do is under his orders. Ferio joked, which was rare for him. Originally, I was going to hold the hostages and wait for help to arrive before causing trouble, and giving General Satha an unforgettable memory. At first, I was very angry because I thought that if things were to blow up prematurely, Satha would be alerted. But now, it seems that Lu Cheng's accident isn't necessarily a bad thing. If we can attract China's revenge and mighty ones to kill us, it seems even more perfect than the original plan. Over 100 demigods, that's a country so powerful that it makes people tremble. The adjutant was enlightened, and he spoke with some concern. But General, you will also be in great danger. If we make a move directly, they will definitely retaliate. Do we only rely on this armed helicopter? With the current ammunition reserves, I'm afraid it will be difficult to kill Lu Cheng, or even hurt him. At his level, his mobility is too high, and his speed is terrifyingly fast. Don't worry, he will be a burden, Ferio replied calmly. He rubbed his face, causing the large patches of beard to fall off. Immediately after, his sea-blue eyes turned dark red. His nose was slightly sunken, his forehead was slightly protruding, and his cheeks were drooping. Although the individual changes weren't big, when put together, it was as if he had become a different person. Look, I'm not Ferio. I'm Zayed, he said with a slight smile. Zayed was General Satha's confidant, and was slightly weaker than Ferio. The adjutant lowered his head even more, his heart filled with fear and uneasiness. After knowing so many secrets, it was normal for him to be afraid of being silenced. Don't worry, I still need your help. Later, if anyone dares to stop to take photos or videos, shoot them with a rocket. After doing this, you will be on the same level as me, Ferio said, both commanding and comforting. Then his expression turned solemn. For the pharaoh. For the pharaoh. The adjutant and the others shouted in unison, all of them fanatical. At this moment, Ferio half closed his eyes and muttered to himself with an intoxicated expression. At this juncture, encountering such an opponent, it really seems like a deliberate arrangement by the gods. This is both a test and an opportunity. I can already imagine the satisfaction, joy and carefreeness after killing Lu Cheng. This will allow me to take that final step and become a true demigod. If I can't defeat and kill Lu Cheng while he's burdened, helpless, and restrained by the armed helicopters, then that means I deserve to die. This lunatic. This sick guy. The adjutant cursed in his heart. He wasn't sure if Brigadier General Ferio was doing this for the pharaoh, for himself, or for both. After a few seconds, Ferio opened his eyes again. He looked down and said with dissatisfaction, "They're too slow. Lower the helicopter," he ordered, then got up and walked to the side of the cabin door. When the helicopter was within 15 meters, Ferio's eyes flashed. He pressed out with his right palm, and the surroundings suddenly turned dark. It was as though a sandstorm was about to hit Oasis Town. The darkness moved slowly, sweeping across one car after another. The heat, activity, and other characteristics of the creatures inside appeared vaguely in Ferio's mind. As long as Lu Cheng didn't control his breathing, heartbeat, and aura, he would be like a torch in the night, bright and eye-catching. At this moment, in the dark lake of Ferio's heart, a burning sensation like the sun shone, tearing apart all the haze and illuminating all the darkness. Found him. Ferio squinted his eyes and said to himself happily. In the crimson car, Yenjuka found that the soldiers at the checkpoint ahead weren't like the soldiers in the city who would kill and humiliate indiscriminately. Other than taking some belongings, they would follow the rules and let them go after inspection. They seem to be looking for someone. The girl observed for a while and speculated. If it involved herself, it would be even more dangerous. This is the government army, Lu Qing concluded. He thought of Officer Cacho, whom he had captured last night, and had a bad feeling about the inspection. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold and evil feeling swept across his body. The strong sense of danger made him shout without thinking. Turn left. Hit the gas. Yen Zheka didn't understand, but she instinctively believed in Lu Qing and his anxious tone. She hurriedly released the brake and stepped on the gas pedal to its limit. At the same time, she turned the steering wheel to the left. Almost no thoughts flashed through her mind during the entire process. With a roaring sound, the car left the engine and sped to the side, entering the muddy ground of the oasis. Bang! At this time, the armed helicopter fired a missile at the place where the car was originally parked. Boom! The strong explosion shook the surrounding glass and overturned the cars in front and behind. Flames and smoke billowed. Speed up and go around the checkpoint. Lu Cheng's heart was as cold as ice as he calmly ordered. Yen Zheka sped up without hesitation, running towards the checkpoint on the bumpy ground of the oasis. Brake! Turn right. Lu Qing looked around and predicted. Whoosh! The crimson car stopped and turned, approaching the original road. 2 rockets, one on the left and one on the right, completed the coverage. Rumble! The violent explosion woke up the others. The escapees no longer cared about anything else and rushed towards the checkpoint in all kinds of ways. The scene became extremely chaotic. Pretty nimble. In the helicopter, Ferio faintly smiled. Holding his unfinished cigar, he leaped down and gracefully landed on top of a car from a height of more than 10 meters. His landing created a huge depression, but he didn't shake or sway. He strode forward, using his own mobility to intercept the relatively heavy crimson car. He was trying to block the route so that it would be distracted by one thing and be hit sooner or later. Seeing the red-eyed man in the military uniform getting closer and closer, Lu Cheng's mind was filled with thoughts. He already had a plan. He sent a voice transmission to Yen Zheka. I'll stop him. You continue to rush through the checkpoint. If you can't dodge, immediately abandon the car and save yourself. Don't worry about anything else. With Ku's strength and mobility, she wouldn't be hit so easily unless they formed a net of fire. And it was very difficult for an armed helicopter to do so. Okay. At this critical juncture, Yen Zheka didn't waste time. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Lu Qing suddenly pushed open the car door and rolled out through the gap. With a push of his hand, he leaped and crossed a distance of more than 10 to 20 meters to where Ferio was. Da, 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 da. The machine gun fired, hitting the air and leaving a row of bullet holes in the ground. Ferio threw away the cigar in his hand, smiled at Lu Qing, and said in perfect English, "Tell me, will you die first or will they?" Chapter 597. Lu Qing had no intention of wasting time with Ferio. Yen Zheka was in danger. To him, every moment was precious. He had to seize every second. The car's speed and mobility couldn't compare to that of an inhuman stage expert. Once faced with such an enemy, there was no way to shake them off or go around them. At such a time, if he was still overcautious and worried about this and that, hesitating to stay in the car, it would be tantamount to sitting and waiting for death. He would be a burden to the people he wanted to protect. Lu Qing had made full use of this in 2 previous missions. He knew this very well. Therefore, when he saw the man in the red uniform approaching, he made a prompt decision to jump out of the car and meet the enemy. As for whether there were other enemies, it was no longer a consideration. If he couldn't even get past this obstacle, what was the point of thinking about anything else? Of course, Lu Qing had also thought of a response to the worst-case scenario. He reminded Ferio that if Yen Zheka was attacked by a strong enemy or was in a situation where she couldn't avoid, she should abandon the car and ignore Zhou Yong and the rest. When the time came, he would protect her and do his best to open a bloody path to retreat into the desert. He would use his inhuman speed and ability to cross mountains to seek hope. Bam! Before Ferio could finish his words, Lu Qing had already pounced forward. He extended his right leg and stomped on the ground. Strength poured into it, and with a flip of the plow, he kicked up a sky full of dirt. Pieces of gold-like rock shot towards his opponent's body like arrows. Whoosh! Between stomps and flicks, he changed his position like a ghost and suddenly arrived at his opponent's flank. He gathered his chi and blood at his lower abdomen, and the ice and fire rotated, forming a Dan in equilibrium. In that instant, Ferrio's face turned ashen, as though he had been dead for a long time. His entire body had turned into a mummified corpse. He raised his left hand to block his eyes, ignoring the other attacks. He allowed the dirt arrows to hit his body, tearing his clothes, splitting his skin, and opening up his muscles. However, all he saw was a grayish-white color, and not a single drop of blood flowed out. Beneath his feet, the moist soil of the oasis dried up in an instant, gathering into lumps and dispersing into sand. The surrounding plants withered one by one, as though their lives had been sucked away. A dim light shone from his feet, and an evil aura enveloped him. Ferrio half-turned his body and swung his fists from left to right. They were so heavy that they seemed to be burdened with hundreds of lives. He was wearing a light golden glove, and there were protrusions at the joints, as if they were bone spurs shining with a cold luster. This was the terrifying legacy of Nile's Nether King lineage, the judgment of withering. Once it hit the opponent, not only would it cause the opponent to retreat, it would also corrode the opponent's flesh and blood, causing them to wither. Before Lu Qing figured out who he was and what he was good at, Ferrio decided to go all out. He wanted to finish him off in a few moves to avoid any unexpected changes. If he could get rid of Lu Qing's comrade before the armed helicopter got rid of him, it would definitely be an achievement worth bragging about. It would boost his confidence and allow him to take the final step to become a demigod. Bang! Ferrio swung his fist horizontally at Lu Qing. He had risked injury just now to prevent his opponent from having a chance to dodge. On the other side, Yanzhika, who was driving, looked straight ahead, observing the guards and the helicopters that appeared from time to time. Her ears were listening to the propellers. She couldn't make as accurate a judgment as Lu Qing, so she could only take the initiative and constantly change directions irregularly to avoid the attacks. Rumble. Da-da-da. Rumble. The crimson sedan was like a swimming fish, swaying its head and tail in an exaggerated manner, advancing and retreating at times. Amidst the smoke and flames, it approached the checkpoint and tried to go around it. Yanzhika's heart was very tense. She knew that it was dangerous to be completely passive. The slightest mistake would immediately result in a blow. Inexperienced, she could only imitate Lu Qing, turning water into ice and telling herself to calm down and calm down. Quietness begets wisdom, and wisdom begets wisdom. The girl, who was prone to minor illnesses and wasn't too afraid of death, quickly regained her rationality. Ridiculous and inflexible thoughts flashed through her mind. At this moment, Lu Qing, who was in Dan equilibrium, was trying his best to hypnotize himself with words like, "Ku is a quasi-Dan stage. She'll definitely be fine," and so on. He placed his will at the apex of the universe and coldly looked down at the stars and darkness below. He moved quickly, and the resplendent heat outlined a fighting character that would never admit defeat, and would fight its way into the 9 heavens. Boom. As Ferrio swung his fist of judgment, Lu Qing exploded his Dan force and expanded his body. Suddenly, in Ferrio's eyes, his opponent, who was less than 1.8 meters tall, transforming into a nearly 2-meter tall monster. His muscles were bulging, and his greenish-black fascias were frightening. He looked down at Ferrio like a giant from the legends. At the same time, Lu Qing's eyes widened in anger. He swung his left fist to the side, breaking through the air barrier and sending it flying at the same time as the explosion. Force concentration superimposed on the fighting formula. Double burst, absolute attack. Shock flashed through Ferrio's eyes as he saw his fists collide with his opponent's. Rumble. It was as if there had been an explosion. Ferrio's dark golden gloves were dented and distorted. Ferrio's bones creaked, and Lu Qing's skin lost its luster. His flesh became shriveled, and the strong wind blew up the surrounding sand and stones, creating a small sandstorm. At that moment, Ferrio's eyes were filled with shock and fear. He felt that his opponent's strength was no less than a demigod's. It even exceeded their usual punches and kicks. It wasn't that Ferio hadn't fought a demigod before. He'd lasted a full 10 seconds, but that was because his opponent had shown restraint, and because he had a choice in his fighting style. How could he face a demigod head-on? *T. Boundless divine power surged. Ferio swung his right arm, and his body shot backward like a bolt of lightning to neutralize the force and prevent fractures and imbalances from occurring at the same time. Lu Qing didn't care about the withered area. Circulating his qi and blood, he stimulated his body and took a step forward. It was as if the ground had shrunk, and he closed in on his opponent again, not giving him a chance to regroup. Another hug, another resplendent star shift. Lu Qing took a step forward with his left foot, and swung his arm like a whip. He was a dozen centimeters taller and twice as strong. His large tendons were like serpents, coiling, pulsating, and knotting. They stirred up the sound of the wind, displaying impressive strength. No fire, no ice, the purest form. Double burst, double combo. Rumble. It was as if a high-speed fighter jet was flying between them. Lu Cheng's whip left behind afterimages as it lashed down in front of his opponent, who couldn't dodge in time. Ferio instantly turned into a mummified corpse. Raising his heavy arm, he hurriedly blocked with his fist with the strength of the underworld. Bam! This whip caused sparks to fly in all directions. It caused the gloves to crack, and it caused Ferio's arms to distort in an abnormal manner. It caused his feet to sink into the ground up to his ankles, and it caused the enemy to pause momentarily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qing took a deep breath, retracted his qi and blood, and returned to the ice and fire embrace, outlining the fighting formula. With a boom, countless capillaries in his eyes burst. His bloodshot eyes locked onto his opponent. His anger from being targeted for no reason, and putting his little fairy in such a dangerous situation boiled over. Double burst, third strike. Bam! Lu Qing pushed his shoulder and swung his arm. His shriveled fist was used as a weapon, and he threw it at Ferio's abdomen. Ferio's feet had just retracted when he could only turn into a mummified corpse again. Gritting his teeth, he reached down and grabbed at his opponent's fist. Rumble! Lu Cheng's fist pushed against Ferio's palm and smashed into his abdomen. The punch pierced through his clothes and muscles, leaving behind a gaping hole where one could see his intestines but no blood flowed out. As an expert who had been on the battlefield for a long time, Ferio didn't care about such a small injury. The soil under his feet quickly eroded, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. He was about to counterattack. At that moment, Lu Qing used his shriveled fist from the realm of all-seeing God to grab Ferio's hand at his abdomen. With a violent shake, his opponent's joints cracked, and the foreign force he had gathered dissipated. His muscles were weak, and he was like a subdued cobra. Darkness appeared in Lu Cheng's mind, cold and deep. With the sound of thunder, Lu Qing pulled his opponent's shoulder, and threw out another punch. White fog swirled around him, and frost filled the air. Severe warning. Not good. Ferio's hair stood on end. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of illusory, pitch-black blood at Lu Cheng's face. The smell of blood spread in all directions, and it was nauseating. He wanted to force his enemy to dodge, neutralize the danger, and gain the upper hand. At that moment, Lu Qing didn't move his body or his feet. He merely tilted his face to the left, avoiding eye contact. Bam! His fist landed on Ferio's shoulder, causing his bones to cave in and ash to scatter everywhere. Sizzle! Half of his face was stained with black liquid and corroded. It was a hideous and terrifying sight. Ferio's eyes were unfocused, as though he had fallen into a long slumber. Lu Cheng's other arm shook, and with a smack, it landed on the stunned enemy's head. Bam! Ferio's head exploded. Fragments and bits of red and white flew everywhere, and no one could find anything that was still intact. He didn't even leave behind a trace of regret or fear. Lu Qing didn't even look at him. He turned around abruptly, picked up a rock, and held it in his palm. Imbuing it with flame force, he took large strides using the simplified attainment formula, and threw it at the helicopter in mid-air. Boom! The rock flew like a rocket, covering a distance of several hundred meters. Behind Lu Qing, the headless Ferio fell to the ground. Chapter 598. On the helicopter, Ferrio's adjutant watched the battle unfold while ordering the pilot to lower the altitude to give the Crimson sedan more pressure and a more saturated attack. He wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Boom. Da-da-da. Missiles exploded and machine guns rained down. The Eagle chased after the prey that had suddenly stopped and turned around. Victory was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Ferrio's adjutant suddenly shouted. His tone was full of panic and fear, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Quick! Dodge! Rise! Immediately after, his voice became sharp as he gave orders in short and hurried words. It was as if he had seen the monster death approaching. The pilot instinctively obeyed. Just as he was about to operate the helicopter, he found that the digital dashboard had become chaotic. He lost control of the helicopter for a moment and stopped in place. No! A beam of white light shot out like a missile. The adjutant's scream of fear and despair was suddenly swallowed up by the violent sound. A red, high-temperature firework bloomed in mid-air. Its tongue spread out and engulfed every corner of the cabin. Boom! The black helicopter exploded for the second time. A bright light leaped out from the fuel tank. A huge, burning ball of light illuminated Yenjika's vision. It suddenly fell to the ground not far from the left side of the sedan. Fragments scattered everywhere as it completely disintegrated. This made the girl, who had used her supernatural ability to interfere with the operation of the helicopter's precision instruments, open her mouth in shock. Her neat white teeth were half open, and her delicate tongue was faintly discernible. After she regained her rationality and grasped the idea, she had been waiting for an opportunity, waiting for the Black Eagle to lower its altitude again and enter the range of her supernatural ability. Running away without counterattacking would cause problems sooner or later. Zhou Xianying also saw this scene through the window. She felt like she was watching a war movie in a movie theater. Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the rest immediately looked over. They were shocked and forgot to rejoice. Yenjika's mind was shaken. She didn't make a mistake in her imagination. Instinctively, she turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator. Once again, they were far away from the checkpoint and avoided the soldiers' gunfire. Suddenly, she felt the undulation of the vehicle and the shaking of the earth. It seemed like there was a herd of wild elephants chasing after them. The small army diagonally in front of them, which had been attacking in a disciplined manner, scattered and fled in panic. There was a limit to a person's courage. There were very few troops that could not break down in a crisis. Thump! Thump! Clear and deafening footsteps sounded. Lu Cheng in his martial arts suit appeared on the right side of the car. He slowed down, opened the door, and sat in the car again. "Are you all right?" Yenjika blurted out. "It's just a small wound." Lu Cheng felt a burning pain on the right side of his face. He knew that the wound was hideous enough to frighten the girls in the back row. In the situation just now, his mind was filled with thoughts of killing his opponent at all costs. In the face of such a powerful enemy, the slightest hesitation or concession would result in a reversal of the situation. At that time, not only would he be in danger, but he would also delay the rescue of Ke. Because of this, he had prepared severe warning and could not divert his attention to use ice armor, so he did not retreat in the face of danger and exchanged injuries for victory. Of course, this was also due to the fact that he was able to accurately judge the enemy's attacks under the realm of encountering gods in the void. That's good. Yenjika heaved a sigh of relief and turned the car onto the road. "Let me heal my wounds first," Lu Cheng said as he visualized. He formed a seal with his hands and exhaled. Confrontation. Tranquility descended. Mysteriously, Lu Cheng's blood flowed into his right fist again, nourishing the withered muscles. Under the frenzied metabolism, it slowly but surely healed itself. However, after shaking off the black liquid, the corroded right side of his face healed rather slowly. It even caused him to feel feverish on his forehead and slight dizziness in his head. Poison? A very strange poison? The thought flashed through Lu Cheng's mind as he made up his mind. He quickly made a forced concentration and gathered ice, fire, mind, qi, blood, and poison in his lower abdomen. A starry sky appeared, rotating and balancing. He placed his consciousness at the apex of the universe. Relying on his superior control, he gathered the poison bit by bit, sending it through the absolute cold darkness. Slowly, it showed signs of freezing and deactivation. In no time, the poison approached the nearest star. It sizzled, burned, and evaporated into gas. Boom. With the explosion of his Dan force, Lu Qing rolled down the car window and spat out a jet of black gas, dispersing it into the natural world. This healing method was unique to him. Confrontation. Lu Qing exhaled again. The corroded skin and flesh on his face fell off, revealing a squirming scarlet that quickly formed a scar. It was still hideous, but much better than before. In another 10 to 20 minutes, the scar would fall off. With the help of his superior self-healing ability and the confrontation formula, the remaining scars would vanish completely in less than 3 days. No need to play ghost. He laughed, drawing Yenjika's puzzled gaze. Unfortunately, she could only see the left side of his face. Disfigured. Yenjika's eyes darted upwards as she made a guess based on the words, playing ghost. She wasn't worried about the outcome. Qing could even remove old scars, let alone new ones. This was truly an ability that he was envious of. It was a pity that it required the realm of all-seeing God, and the confrontation formula. In a moment of desperation, Lu Qing answered succinctly. With that, he looked at the road ahead, at the occasional abandoned car by the roadside due to forgetting to refuel. He sighed softly. I thought an opponent like that could force me to make a breakthrough. Unfortunately, all it did was add some experience to the deathmatch. In the back row, Zhou Yong, Ma Chaoyang, and the rest fell silent. They weren't martial arts enthusiasts, so they couldn't tell Ferrio's level of strength. However, they had a deep understanding of how terrifying a fully equipped armed helicopter was from television, daily life, and the experience of being hunted down. One could only imagine how terrifying someone who could destroy such a thing so effortlessly was. After hearing Lu Qing's exclamation, Yenjika pursed her lips and comforted him. Perhaps you have to walk your own path. External forces are useless. Following that, she changed the topic. Chung, I feel that my supernatural ability is similar to a magnetic field. It's quite useful against high-tech and high-precision things. Yes. Lu Qing agreed. As he spoke, he replayed everything that had happened in his mind. Suddenly he said, Cuckoo, stop the car. What's wrong? Yenjika stepped on the pedals slowly, and brought the car to a steady stop. And Mighty One close to physical invulnerability attacked us out of the blue. This is very strange. I'm afraid there will be more trouble in the future. Lu Qing couldn't understand why someone would come after him when he had already reported the situation to the military. Was it a misunderstanding, a chance encounter, or something else? To prevent the worst from happening, he made a prompt decision. He turned to Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the rest and said, My girlfriend and I seem to have become targets. You guys will be in more danger if you follow us. Why don't we split up now? You guys switch to another car and drive to Kukang. Now that there are refugees everywhere, you won't stand out if you blend in with them. When you get there, you won't enter the city, but you'll pass through the checkpoints. Follow the route I'll give you later. What about you guys? Zhou Yong and Ma Chaoyang asked in unison. We'll walk in the wilderness and over the mountains. This way, we'll be more mobile and less likely to be discovered. Lu Qing only described the method, and didn't mention the actual destination. Thinking of the running ability they had shown, Li Xiaoyan and the rest fell silent. Then they recalled the terrifying rocket attack, and felt that it might be better to split up. Hence they nodded and thanked him. Lu Qing immediately asked his wife to turn the car around and drive back to Boritown. He found a car that had lost its owner and had a key. Using Yenjika's supernatural ability, he extracted gasoline from the abandoned car and poured it into the car. When he tossed the key to Zhou Yong, he picked up a few weapons for them. He also asked a girl who was trained in shooting and hunting to teach them how to use them. Thank you, thank you. See you back in China. Ma Chaoyang and the rest waved goodbye and drove along the road to Kukang. Where are we going? Yenjika glanced around and asked sharply. Walking in the wilderness was a given, but where exactly? To Fartuat. When we get to Kukang, We still have to go to Dika before we can leave. I'm afraid of accidents. Fartuat is a little far and not suitable for Zhou Yong and the rest, but for us, if we take a straight line, it won't be too bad. Once we get there, there will be boats to help us evacuate, Lu Cheng explained. Okay. Yenjika looked up and nodded. Then she added, my supernatural ability can also determine the direction like a compass, so I'm not afraid of getting lost. Since they were going to walk in the wilderness, the two gave up a portion of their luggage, leaving only the girls' shoulders to pack the most important items. After everything was done, Lu Qing notified the military while there was still signal. He carried Yenjika on his back and strode out of the oasis, moving faster than a speeding car. Along the way, he took care to hide his tracks. Kukang inside the military base. General Satha, whose hair was wrapped up, received a report from Teton City. It said that Brigadier General Forio had failed to attack in Eastern Mighty One, and was killed instead. Eastern Mighty One? Hua Nation? Forio? Satha narrowed his eyes as if he had understood something. He clenched his fist and growled. Pharaoh. After a few seconds, he called Zayed and asked him to gather the Brotherhood leaders in the military, and put Kukang under martial law. Lu Qing carried Yenjika on his back. He ran and rested, sometimes in a straight line, sometimes in a roundabout way, sometimes in a dash, sometimes in hiding. After 5 hours, they finally smelled the damp seawater and saw the beautiful city in the distance. Fartuat. Throughout the whole process, the girl didn't speak much and didn't ask to move alone. She only stayed alert when Lu Qing rested and gave him water when he was thirsty, so that he wouldn't waste his ice force. Every time she thought of hiding in the shadows of the sand dunes, watching out for each other, their bodies pressed against each other, she felt that there was no need for words. Their hearts were connected. Few were almost liberated. Lu Qing looked at the city and laughed. Yenjika pursed her lips, revealing her dimples. It wasn't easy. After sighing, she tilted her head slightly and smiled sweetly. Cheng, I have good news for you. What? Lu Qing asked in confusion. Ku has been on my back all this time, and there was no signal. What good news could there be? After today's training, I feel like I can complete force concentration now. Yenjika raised her chin and announced proudly and expectantly. This would help Qing perfect his martial arts and find the path to physical invulnerability. This was something he had been waiting for a long time. P.S. Allergic dermatitis, patches of it on your body. Sigh. Chapter 599. Surprised and delighted, Lu Qing blurted out. Really? His reaction made Yenjika feel very proud. She slightly tilted her head and snorted with her eyes twinkling. You still don't believe me? That's because I thought you would need at least 6 or 7 more days of training. Lu Qing didn't hide his surprise and delight. Haha, you underestimate me. Yenjika chuckled and then said thoughtfully. When I'm on the brink of death, my body and soul seem to be connected and become one. However, I still prefer a stable and peaceful life. Me too. We're not afraid of accidents, but we don't want to encounter them either. Lu Qing chimed in. Yenjika hid in the shadow of a sand dune. She looked at the scorching sun hanging high in the sky and said eagerly, Shall I show you now or wait until we're in the city? Let's do it now. Lu Qing replied after some thought. Due to the interruption of communication, he didn't know much about the situation in the port city of Fartuat. He needed to rest and recover his strength to deal with any accidents. Since that was the case, he might as well take the opportunity to experience the changes in Yenjika's first dan of equilibrium, and find the key to merging martial arts and cultivation. There might be surprises. Okay. Yenjika nodded solemnly. She drank the last mouthful of water, and tossed the bottle aside. She got into her stance and visualized the confrontation formula. She reined in her body and mind and adjusted her spirit. Immediately after, Yenjika retracted her chi, blood, body force and earth force, condensing them into a ball that spun wildly. Her willpower was like a millstone, constantly squeezing this small ball, and shrinking it rapidly until it reached a certain limit. At this moment, she guided her spirit and caused the Big Dan to collapse and form a balance. The earth force was the star, and the chi force was the darkness. Lu Cheng, who had already formed the ice mirror and placed his palm on Yenjika's shoulder, suddenly felt that the Big Dan of the human body at equilibrium was guiding the vibrations in her head. It created a miraculous and temporary resonance with the surroundings and the blue sky above. Resonance. A bolt of lightning flashed through the fog in Lu Cheng's mind, illuminating all the darkness and fuzziness. He found the commonality between the different cultivation methods and understood the point of blending cultivation and martial arts. Yes, resonance. The resonance between the human body and nature. Just like in the ordinary dance stage, the effect of force depended on the special waves produced by the body to create different effects. Physical invulnerability meant that one's body, mind, and spirit were integrated as one, resonating with the outside world and heaven and earth, creating a direct connection. Regardless of whether it was the prayer asceticism of the mission sect, the mass ceremony, or the depraved actions of the spirit cultivators that broke the fixed pattern, they were all for the sake of removing the shackles of the soul, guiding the changes in the spirit, and triggering a special frequency that would gradually strengthen and obtain feedback. Their purpose was to establish a connection with the heavenly master, the devil, and their own spirit, and to establish a channel. Judging from Ku's progress just now, this kind of resonance was not only related to the formation of the Dan in equilibrium, but also involved the ethereal and indescribable spirit. It also involved the brain that produced this kind of wave. Even though modern technology was advanced, they still couldn't figure out 10 to 20% of the mystery of the brain. Back then, he also had a similar experience, but at that time, he was muddle-headed and didn't understand, so it didn't leave a deep impression on him. Lu Cheng withdrew his right hand. He had a new understanding of the differences and similarities between cultivation and martial arts at this stage. The reason why cultivators could naturally connect to heaven and earth once they formed the Jindan was because their Jindan was a substantial product of highly condensed essence, chi, spirit, and will. It was in equilibrium as heaven and earth, corresponding to a certain prototype, and resonating. Moreover, their spirit was completely integrated into it, so they could very easily and smoothly guide the changes in the special positions of the brain. Martial artists controlled the spirit with their will, and through visualization, they changed, polished, and improved it. It guided the movement of the organs and muscles, going deep into the details, causing the genes to mutate. Through force concentration, all these processes gradually formed a whole. When the root pulp and spirit resonated with the outside world and reached a certain level, the barrier would be broken and the connection would be formed. It seems that at this stage, when I reached the Dan in equilibrium, I could actually resonate with heaven and earth, which was a pseudo-physical invulnerability. However, this state wouldn't last long. Once it was dissolved, I would immediately fall back to the inhuman level. Lu Cheng looked at Yenjika, who had opened her eyes, and praised sincerely. You're now a Dan stage expert, and the kind with supernatural abilities. Yenjika seemed to have washed away the dullness of passing through the sand, and became radiant again. Her eyebrows curved, and her dimples deepened. How about you? Did you comprehend anything? More or less. Lu Cheng pretended to be calm and answered. He already had an idea of what to do next. He also understood why he couldn't make the great leap when he disintegrated the Jindan. Simply put, it was uncoordinated. The root pulp of the spirit was not in harmony with the actual state. He had reached the Dan in equilibrium, resonating with the outside world with the cosmic universe. When he usually visualized, he cultivated Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit. The two intertwined, each had their own force, and they mutated separately. In the end, he had to rely on the rotation of force concentration to forcefully form a whole, which was why they were separated. The most important thing now was to change the visualization diagram, fusing ice and fire into one from the source, and then guiding the spirit and root pulp to truly transform them into the cosmic universe. As for how to change the visualization diagram, of course, it was based on the heaven and earth of the Dan during force concentration. And when he reached the Dan in equilibrium, He could also adjust according to the resonance with the outside world, making the cosmic universe more complete and compatible. You've thought it through? Yenjika's eyes lit up with surprise and asked instinctively, does this mean Cheng is about to make the great leap? Yes. Next, we can think of various ways to try to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Lu Qing suddenly gave her a thumbs up and smiled. Indeed, I still have to rely on you, Coach Yen. Of course, the girl pursed her lips and raised her head happily and proudly. I'm the pillar of our family. Lu Qing calmed down and thought carefully for a while. He had a clear understanding of the conditions for a martial artist to reach the physical invulnerability stage. First, the strength of the body had to reach a certain standard, due to the mutation of the root pulp and the cultivation of the body. Connecting with the heaven and earth was like walking in the universe, full of danger. How could one do it without a qualified protective suit? Second, the spirit and root pulp had to resonate with the outside world, and the intensity was not low. This was the basic condition for a breakthrough. Third, the realm of all-seeing God or super strong innate talent. Without these, one would not be able to control the minute details of the body and establish a connection with the outside world. And with it, the second condition could be twice the result with half the effort, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Fourth, a strong willpower. This was the key to breaking through the final barrier. It was like a ship that was ready, but to cross the river, one still needed a helmsman. Lu Cheng's supernatural ability had awakened for the 3rd time. His physical strength had long surpassed the standard, and he already had the 3rd condition. Now he only needed to change the visualization, adjust the minute details, and achieve resonance. When that time came, everything would be ready, except for the east wind. These conditions, other than all-seeing God, were all part of the grinding process. Therefore, the earlier one reached the high pin, the more time one had to train, and the easier it would be for them to reach the physical invulnerability stage. It was no wonder that many inhumans would enter the war-torn zones for real practical training. The stimulation between life and death could indeed strengthen one's willpower and help them take the final step. Of course, the breakthrough was a process, not a node. Even if one broke through the barrier at the last moment, it would still take 10 to 20 days to connect with the heaven and earth, adjust according to the feedback, and establish a solid connection. Only when all this was done would one be a true physical invulnerability mighty one. Thinking of this, Lu Qing smiled and said to Yenjika, help me watch. I'll give it a try. Okay. The new Danqi expert, Cuckoo, was eager to try and keep a lookout for her surroundings. Lu Qing stood in a still stance, gathered his qi and blood in his dantian, and let the universe of darkness and stars take shape and rotate slowly. This time, he didn't do things like writing the 9 words formula. Instead, he raised his willpower, messed up his mind, and let it spread throughout the dantian. The universe inhaled and exhaled, and the stars moved naturally. In that feeling of silence, Lu Qing felt as though he was truly standing outside the atmosphere, in the cold and dangerous darkness. The blazing sun in the distance breathed and expanded with the same rhythm, as though it had a subtle connection with him. Comprehending the resonance and the charm, Lu Qing only ended the Dan concentration realm after a few minutes. His force gushed out of him. He activated the confrontation formula, cleared his mind, and started visualizing again. This time, he wasn't visualizing Emperor Yen or Ice Spirit, but a combination of the two. The former was the star, heavy and scorching, while the latter was the void, cold and dark. They guided each other, transformed each other, rotated, and balanced. It was in line with the miniature universe after Lu Cheng's force concentration. After repeated attempts, Lu Qing finally completed this new visualization with reference when he was in a state of exhaustion. Visualizing refined the mind guided the root pulp, and the already balanced state of ice and fire adjusted slightly, making it even more harmonious. Beside him, Yenjika looked around and listened attentively, focusing on completing the task Lu Qing gave her. After an unknown period of time, she suddenly heard a series of thunderous sounds around her. They went from sparse to dense, and gradually merged into one. Amidst the banging sounds, she looked back at her husband in shock. She realized that the air around Lu Cheng had formed a vortex, and when it landed on her, it was both hot and cold. It can't be right? Yenjika was speechless, dumbfounded. At this moment everything calmed down. Lu Cheng slowly opened his eyes, and in the depths of his eyes was a dazzling darkness, like the perfect starry night sky in the highlands. You broke through? Yenjika blurted out. How is that possible? Lu Cheng shook his head and laughed. He continued, however, maybe it's because the root pulp was guided by the Jindan during the third awakening of the supernatural ability. Ice and fire blended into one, and it wasn't difficult to achieve a resonance. So? Yenjika asked in confusion. Lu Cheng smiled happily. So after another 2 or 3 adjustments, maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll have all the prerequisites for physical invulnerability. Chapter 600. I see. Hearing Lu Cheng's announcement, Yenjika was both excited and excited. Then she looked up and asked thoughtfully, then, are we going to seek breakthroughs with the help of life and death battles? Before Lu Cheng could answer, he turned his ear and pulled her to the most hidden spot of the sand dune. 20 seconds later, a few figures flitted past, stirring up a gust of sand as they headed for the port city of Fartuat. They're pretty strong, Yenjika whispered as she looked over. There are 3 dance stage experts. They don't look like Nile people. They're probably refugees here on holiday. Lu Cheng rubbed his throbbing temples. Ku, I'm going to take a nap. You continue to be on guard. He didn't use the wholeness formula. He wanted to be in his best condition to face any possible situation in Fartuat. Okay. Yenjika agreed without hesitation. She had already forgotten about her previous question. Lu Cheng sat down cross-legged and visualized the confrontation formula. He cleared his mind and quickly fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Just like that, under the scorching hot desert sun in the afternoon, he slept for a full hour. When he woke up, he was full of energy, full of vigor, and was a good man again. Ku, you should rest too. Recover to your peak condition. Lu Cheng didn't get up. He stretched his neck. Yenjika nodded obediently. She hid in the shadows and leaned against Lu Cheng. After calming down her excited mind, she slowly fell asleep. The day's fatigue and tension had all melted away. When she woke up, it was close to evening. The sun was setting in the west, dyeing the yellow sand crimson. It was as though the place had turned into a blazing sea of fire. It was a magnificent sight. So beautiful. Yenjika opened her eyes. This was the first scene she saw. She felt like she was still in a dream. This was the calm after chaos. This was the relaxation of wariness. In her eyes, this was the most beautiful scenery of her trip to Nile. The two leaned against each other and looked at each other for a while. They got up at the same time and climbed up the sand dune. They looked at Fartuat again and saw that the lights of the port city were already lit up. The power hasn't been cut off yet. This means that even if there's chaos, it's only in certain areas. The overall situation is still orderly, Yenjika said logically. Let's go. Lu Cheng smiled and squatted down. The girl leaned over and asked curiously, Cheng, what's the difference between your path of martial arts and cultivation? She had been pondering about this matter before. To be more precise, it's a combination of martial arts and cultivation. My final breakthrough will be more like martial arts. With the help of Dan Equilibrium, I'll be able to resonate with the outside world in advance and establish a connection between my brain, spirit, and root pulp. The final step will still be the path of martial arts, but slightly different in details. Lu Cheng pondered as he rushed down the sand dune and headed for his destination like a hurricane. Strangely enough, his words were not affected in the slightest by the violent wind. Yenjika lowered her body and whispered in his ear. So you're the one who opened up a new path in the martial Tao? You can say that. Lu Cheng hesitated, but decided not to be modest. Opening up your own path and expanding your martial arts. Our Cheng is now a true Grandmaster. Yenjika's eyes sparkled as she praised him proudly. Let's wait until I've truly reached the physical invulnerability stage before saying that. Lu Cheng shook his head and laughed. He changed the topic thoughtfully. Speaking of which, the breakthrough to physical invulnerability involves the brain. Does that mean I have to master this aspect completely before I can advance to the forbidden territory? Perhaps. Yenjika didn't know much about this. She sighed. Since it involves the brain, it's no wonder there's a saying that if you don't reach physical invulnerability by the age of 30, you'll never be able to reach it. A martial artist who can break through this limitation must have a strong and determined heart. Before reaching the forbidden territory, due to the complexity of the brain, even if an adult in his 30s looked energetic and was still growing, and his body showed signs of continuing to grow stronger, his plasticity in all aspects would begin to decrease. The changes to the essence of the mind from cultivation would gradually become negligible. If he couldn't resonate with the outside world now, it would be almost impossible for him to do so in the future. Yeah. Lu Cheng sighed when he thought of his brother-in-law, Little Ming, and the people who were struggling to advance on this path. The couple didn't chat further. They ran past a few sand dunes and stepped onto the road, nearing Fartuat. 10 minutes later, Lu Cheng carried Yenjika on his back and entered the port city by taking the wrong route. They circled around the chaotic areas where gunshots rang out. After a few moments of searching, they finally found the heavily guarded Chinese consulate in Fartuat before nightfall. The consulate was filled with people from both the local and nearby cities. They had escaped to this place. Some of them had laid down something and were sleeping on the floor. Some of them were holding cell phones with intermittent signal, bored and waiting anxiously. You're finally here. I thought something bad had happened. Consul Mao Xiaobing greeted them. He held Lu Cheng's right hand with both hands and shook it vigorously. He wasn't in a suit but was instead in casual wear. His sneakers were stained, and his usually neat slicked-back hair was disheveled. It was obvious that he was too busy to care about his image. I didn't dare to stay in a state of exhaustion for too long. I was afraid of encountering unexpected situations, so I rested whenever I had the chance. That's why we're so late, explained Lu Cheng. Mao Xiaobing led them to the interior of the building and said as they walked. As they walked, he said, "Everything's been arranged. The first batch of ships will arrive tomorrow morning from the other side of the Sea of Death. They'll help you evacuate to Acropolis and take a flight back to China." "Okay," answered Lu Cheng and Yenjika in unison. Yenjika's eyes darted around. Embarrassed, she requested, "Mr. Consul, is the landline still working? Is there a satellite phone? I want to let my family know that I'm safe." "Yes. I'll take you there. Elder Ji and Elder Sher have called a few times already," said Mao Xiaobing as he led the couple into an office and pointed at a desk. "Oh right, Ma Chaoyang and the rest who were with you previously have also arrived at Kukang and met up with the main force. I heard about it when I contacted them earlier," added Mao Xiaobing. That's good, that's good." Yenjika heaved a sigh of relief. She picked up the phone and dialed home. "Hello?" Ji Mingyu's solemn and tense voice came from the other end of the line. "Mom, I'm at Fartuat. I'm at the consulate," said Yenjika hurriedly. "Phew." Ji Mingyu heaved a long sigh of relief. Concerned, she asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm already a Dan stage mighty one." Yenjika couldn't help but boast. Ji Mingyu couldn't help but laugh. She spat and said, "Are you mocking your mom's martial arts realm? All right, thank Lu for me." "What are you thanking him for? There's no need for thanks between us," said Yenjika in a hushed voice as she glanced at Mao Xiaobing, who had left the room. Lu Cheng nodded with a smile. "You're you, and I'm me. As a mother, can't I thank him for protecting my daughter?" said Ji Mingyu amused. After chatting for a while and talking to Yen Kai, Yenjika hung up the phone. She turned to Lu Cheng and said, "It's your turn." "Okay." Lu Cheng first informed his family that he was safe, and told them that the tourists here weren't affected. Then he called Geezer Sher. "Hey, I knew you were fine. Nyla's in a mess. Who would target you for no reason?" said Sher Jiangwo proudly. At the end of his sentence he said in a serious tone, "Brat, I have something for you to do." "What is it?" Lu Cheng was surprised. "Go to Kukang or Dika and help me find a man named Cirrus. He helped me before, and can be considered as my savior." Now that he's in a mess, he's asking me for help through the embassy. Help me find him and evacuate with his family. I'll get the military to give you the specific information. How about it? Do you have the guts? Do you have the confidence to do it? Asked Wuxia with a sneer. I'm confident that I can escape from a physical invulnerability expert, thought Lu Cheng. Don't worry, master. I'll do my best. As long as my life isn't in danger. Good. At least you have some filial piety. Shi Zhengwo clicked his tongue. Alright, don't hang up. I'm with Geezer Ji. He has something to tell you too. Kuku's grandpa? Lu Cheng waited in confusion. In the girl's confused eyes, he heard Ji Jianzhang's clear voice. Lu, I don't treat you as an outsider. I'll get straight to the point. Lin Ke Sai. After Lin Ke broke through to the inhuman stage, he snuck into the war-torn zone. With his current level, it's very dangerous for him to deal with the situation there. Moreover, it's very likely that he'll come to Nile and take advantage of the chaos to hone himself. Damn, my brother-in-law is really capricious. It's really like his style. Lu Cheng criticized in his heart and answered sincerely. Yes, Senior Ji. After hanging up the phone, Shi Zhengwo and Ji Jianzhang, who were in the military base, looked at each other and laughed at the same time. If we don't find something for him to do, this stinky brat will definitely follow your little yen back to China. He won't take advantage of the chaos in Nile. Sharpen his skills with real weapons. Wuxia acted as if he knew his unfilial disciple like the back of his hand. Ji Jianzhang sighed and smiled. We can only do so much. Whether he can make the great leap still depends on himself. Lu Cheng had just put down the phone when Yan Zhika, who had been listening, covered her face and smiled bitterly. My brother is really... How could you bring him back? She didn't mention the mission. She understood and accepted. Knock him out and drag him away, answered Lu Cheng without hesitation. At this moment, Mao Xiaobing knocked on the door and entered. He smiled and said, I'll bring you to meet someone. Who is it? Asked Lu Cheng, hiding his confusion. You know each other. Mao Xiaobing smiled and turned to leave. Lu Cheng and Yan Zhika followed with a confused look. When they reached the second floor, he pushed open the door of the small meeting room and revealed a figure inside. It was Peng Liyun, wearing a blue martial arts suit, with short hair, looking fresh and clean. Only then did the heavenly son of the era retract the light in his eyes. The surroundings were dark and the pressure outside the window was heavy. Priest! Shouted Lu Cheng in surprise and delight. Then his eyes turned cold and he blurted out. You've reached physical invulnerability? Priests seem to be able to communicate with heaven and earth and summon lightning at any time. Yeah. Peng Liyun nodded with a smile. Previously in the war-torn zones, I fought with a few experts. Among them was Vagar. He improved quickly and fully developed his supernatural ability. He's almost at the level of a physical invulnerability expert. We're not the only ones who have the opportunity to improve by leaps and bounds. Anyway, I've finally made the great leap in the pursuit. Congratulations. Lu Cheng and Yan Zhika cupped their hands and smiled without any reservations. Aren't you going to be there soon? Peng Liyun chuckled, feeling the interaction between Lu Cheng and the surroundings. Yes, admitted Lu Cheng frankly. Then he asked, why are you in Nile? Peng Liyun smiled and said, I've received a lot of favors from the military in the war-torn zones. This time, I'm here to help and save some people. Also, in this chaotic situation, it's convenient for me to challenge the famous experts in Nile. He sounded eager, like a certain someone. Why do I feel like you've been infected by Runli? Teased Lu Cheng. Maybe. Peng Liyun fell into deep thought. After a long while he came back to his senses and said, maybe we're both learning from each other. He suggested with great interest. Second, you're about to break through and need the stimulation of a battle of life and death. Why don't we do it together? No need. I have a sect mission, replied Lu Cheng with a smile. All right, I'll wait for Runli here. We agreed to meet at the Fartuat consulate. She's almost a day late. She's also about to break through, explained Peng Liyun. I don't think you can wait. Maybe she's already headed straight for the North Pole. Lu Cheng was shocked that Renli could still get lost in the war-torn zones. After chatting for a while, the couple bade farewell and left. Under Mao Xiaobing's arrangement, they had a small room to rest in. Lu Cheng took advantage of his good condition to visualize the cosmic map again, adjusting his spirit and root pulp. This time, he practiced until the wee hours of the morning. After sleeping for 2 hours, he woke up again and continued practicing. At dawn, Yenjika, who had slept in her clothes, opened her eyes. She saw Lu Cheng practicing the routine in the small space. He looked relaxed, natural and energetic. "You're done?" asked Yenjika happily. "Yeah." Lu Cheng stopped and nodded. He smiled and said, "Ku, didn't you ask me yesterday if I'm going to use the training of a battle of life and death to seek a breakthrough? I forgot to answer. I'll tell you the answer now." Yenjika's brain couldn't wrap around it. Lu Cheng said slowly, "I really have to thank Gugu. The experience of a battle of life and death with him allowed me to clearly understand what I'm worried about, and what I'm reluctant to leave behind at the final juncture. During that painful and torturous trough, the blows of having my hopes dashed time and time again cleared my mind. I summarized the techniques and understood what I really want, what I'm protecting, and why I'm fighting. I've never felt so clear and determined before. With this, I took that courageous step and obtained a new life. Since you've already taken that step, why do you still seek the stimulation of a battle of life and death?" He paused for a moment and said calmly, "That dragon gate, I'll open it myself." Yenjika was stunned at first, but then she was overjoyed. She saw a light gather in Lu Cheng's eyes. A light seemed to be blooming between his eyebrows, and the air around them began to swirl wildly. In another room a few meters away, Peng Liyun, who was stretching his muscles, suddenly stopped. He opened the window with a heart full of doubt. He saw that in the scorching summer, in the country of the desert, a cold wind was blowing, and there was frost condensing. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at the place where Lu Cheng and Yenjika were temporarily staying. Jumping the Dragon Gate without a battle? P.S. It's a 4,000-word chapter, so it's a little late. Chapter 601. The invisible barrier was tough and sturdy. It was both an instinctive protection of the body and a shackle formed by past knowledge. Without a strong will and clear grasp, there was no way to break it. However, with a single thought from Lu Cheng, it had already collapsed. It was torn to pieces by the resonance of his surging spirit and all his root pulps. At this moment, Lu Cheng was like a newborn baby exposed to the scorching sun and exposed to the bone-piercing cold. Every part of his body became fragile and felt unbearable. He was on the verge of collapsing. However, his body that had been tempered and polished was only slightly damaged. It healed quickly and successfully passed the adaptation period. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Cheng felt his pituitary gland, ethereal spirit, and root pulps beating at the same time. They contracted and expanded according to their usual visualization characteristics. The rhythm was shocking. Thump, thump, thump. The void around him vibrated as if echoing his words. At that moment, in Lu Cheng's senses, the world around him had already changed. The starry sky seemed to be pulled in front of him. Darkness enveloped everything. Only the bright and scorching sun embellished the curtain and warmed the small area that belonged to him. This was both an illusion and the reflection of the universe on the planet. It surfaced due to the resonance. Thump, 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 thump. Lu Cheng's pervasive spirit and every root pulps turned into an independent, balanced, and rotating universe. They were in line with the illusion and slowly established a subtle connection. All the pores on his body opened up, and he began to breathe. When he breathed in, wind and air surged. When he breathed out, cold and hot intertwined. Often, there was a shadow mixed with a faint flame. Yenjika stood at the side and watched the scene in a daze. It was like watching fireflies dance in the dark when she was young. However, the touch on her skin was sometimes cold and sometimes hot. The interior of the room turned dark. White frost condensed and snowflakes drifted. Against their backdrop, little bits of light melted the surroundings and existed in harmony and balance. So beautiful. This is the external connection between heaven and earth. Yenjika murmured in a daze. She controlled her muscles to vibrate slightly and bounce off the small things that landed on her skin. In the consulate, the people sleeping in the lobby and corridors suddenly shivered as they felt the arrival of the north wind. They opened their eyes blankly and saw white snow falling, highlighting their most beautiful appearance. You must be dreaming, people whispered to themselves. In reality, it should be August. It should be an oasis surrounded by deserts. It's true, it's true. Someone reached out and caught a snowflake, feeling the cold wetness. At this moment, rays of light soared up, as if countless clones of the noon sun had split out, illuminating the early morning consulate, bringing warmth to many creatures shivering in the cold wind. However, this did not affect Beifeng in the slightest, nor did it affect the dance of the snow fairies. It was as if they had long since divided the territory. However, the borders were so blurry, and the process was gradual. Everyone stared blankly. They felt that their hearts were shocked by this fantastic scenery, but they were also filled with doubt and puzzlement. When it snows in June, there must be great injustice. Then what does it mean when it snows in August? Physical invulnerability. A fight between physical invulnerability experts, exclaimed the man, who had been watching top-class professional matches all year round in shock. It was difficult for a fight of this level to not affect the surroundings. Who knew when the consulate building would collapse? Yes, physical invulnerability experts. Many people came to their senses and agreed. They wanted to run out but were afraid of being caught in the crossfire. Just as fear was spreading rapidly, the light dimmed, and the north wind weakened. Everything disappeared quickly, and the environment reverted back to 6 in the morning. Dawn broke, and darkness fell. Peng Liyun stood by the window in a daze. His thoughts drifted to who knows where. After a long time, his eyes rekindled and he sighed. His previous encounters and circumstances have become his valuable assets. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. Lu Qing slowly opened his eyes. All the illusions had faded, and he saw that the room was small, with only one bed and one chair. He saw the beautiful girl looking at him with her bright eyes. This was reality. How was it? Asked Yenjika expectantly, holding back her joy. Not bad. Lu Qing held himself back and smiled. The dragon gate had been leaped. All that was left was the process. At 9 in the morning, at Fartuat port, ships approached one after another, covering the sea. They all waved the Chinese flag, which was greeted with cheers. Lu Qing bade farewell to Peng Liyun, and accompanied Yenjika on the departing passenger ship. 2 hours later, they arrived at the ancient Acropolis. Shushan Study had already arranged a flight for the girl back home. It was a military flight. At the entrance of the airport, the couple stuck together for a while. Yenjika pursed her lips and smiled. She waved her hand and said, "Go on. I'll be more assured if you complete the mission now. I always do my best without harming myself." Lu Qing smiled as he watched his wife leave. He took out his phone and called his master. "Hey brat. Did you send Yenjika to a safe place?" asked Geyser leisurely. "I sent her to the airport in Acropolis. Her flight is coming soon." Lu Qing answered honestly. He then said, "Master, I have something to report to you." "What is it?" "Don't tell me you don't want to go to Nile?" asked Shi Jiangwo calmly. Lu Qing cleared his throat and said, "Master, I've made the great leap." "What?" Geyser picked his ear and coughed violently. After a long time he said, "You've become a physical invulnerability expert?" "Not yet. I'm still at the stage of stabilizing the connection. I'm not considered a complete physical invulnerability expert yet." Lu Qing answered honestly and explained the whole story. "After Ku reached Dan equilibrium, I realized where my problem was. I found the inconsistency that prevented me from making a breakthrough before. Specifically, after the adjustment of the new visualization diagram, I met all the conditions, so I tried to make a breakthrough on my own." He didn't hide anything and told her the whole story, down to the details. Tried to break through on his own. Geyser listened in silence. At the end he laughed dryly and said, "Not bad. Not bad. Speaking up to this point, he added as if emphasizing, "You didn't let me down." Lu Qing smiled happily. He didn't say anything else and asked about the matter at hand. "Master, have you handed the information on Cirrus to the military? Is it okay if I contact them using the original method?" "Yes." "No," answered Geyser blankly. "That's good. I'll look for them right away." Lu Qing hung up. Beep, beep, beep. Hearing the remaining sound, Geyser was stunned for a full 5 seconds. He then drank a mouthful of wine and said, "You broke through just like that?" With his hands behind his back, he paced back and forth and fell into a dilemma. "I have to tell Geyser Ji. Forget it. How do I tell him? I don't even know where to put my old face. That rascal. Geyser Ji will find out sooner or later. I won't tell him." After contacting the military and receiving the information, Lu Qing flipped through it seriously and got a general idea of the situation. Cirrus was a Nile mighty one in his 40s or 50s. He hadn't reached demigod and usually lived in Dika. On the night of the chaos, he took the initiative to contact the Chinese embassy and provided many secrets. With his strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to evacuate from Nile if he wasn't targeted by experts. His core request was for follow-up protection. After some discussion, the military agreed. After that, Cirrus went to Kukhang in the middle of the night. He wanted to bring his son and family, who were living there with him. However, he didn't return and couldn't be contacted. "Looks like I have to go to Kukhang first." Lu Qing sat in the room of the passenger ship headed for Fartuat. He closed his eyes and communicated with the heavens and earth, stabilizing the connection bit by bit. Around him, the sun was dim and the shadows were as dark as night. Occasionally, there would be bright flashes. In a building in Kukhang, Constantine, dressed in a black tuxedo, looked in the direction of the military base. He raised a glass of blood-red wine and said, "Satha has already sensed that something is amiss. The security is tight." As he spoke, his dark red cape fluttered lightly as if it had a life of its own. To Constantine's left, a mummy wrapped in bandages with only a beard on his head answered calmly, "We will have help." Constantine took a sip of wine and said thoughtfully, "Wouldn't it be too obvious if the Brotherhood's leaders, the Pharaoh's opponents, died one by one? Those who died seemed to be loyal to the Pharaoh." The mummy gave him a look that said, "You don't have to worry." "All right. Anyway, I have to drink a mouthful of Satha's blood," said Constantine with a nonchalant smile. The mummy waited for help and said casually, "From the information we received from the intelligence agency, Peng, one of the Chinese heavenly sons of the era, has become a demigod." So fast. Constantine was stunned at first. Then he chuckled with intoxicated eyes. "A terrifying heavenly son of the era. His blood must be delicious and worth tasting." It could be considered a fairly modern city. In this area, it was only slightly worse than the capital of the Nile, Decca. The sky was blazing red. It was a magnificent sight, casting a crimson veil over the city. Lu Qing circled around the edge of the huge oasis for a while, and realized that there were checkpoints set up on several important roads. The soldiers were very disciplined. Other than occasionally stealing or taking some rewards, they didn't do anything out of the ordinary. It was a stark contrast to Tetons and Fartuat. 2 words popped into Lu Qing's mind at the sight of this. Order. The actual ruler of Kukhang is quite capable. He sighed inwardly. He didn't take the main road, but instead he climbed over many obstacles and quietly entered the city. Passing through a few streets, he saw remnants of crossfire, residents queuing for water with bitter expressions, and fanatical or numb pedestrians. As the Chinese consulate in Kukhang was retreating to Decca, Lu Qing didn't go there first. Instead, he followed the map and found the vicinity of Gunam Street, apartment 63. This was the residence of Cirrus's son Galu. However, there seemed to have been an intense battle here. A few buildings were charred black, the windows were almost completely shattered, and there were clear bullet holes everywhere. In such an environment, the 3rd floor of apartment 63 was particularly eye-catching. The walls facing the street had all collapsed, revealing the dilapidated interior. It seemed to have been ravaged by a demolition team, so much so that it affected both the upper and lower floors. This was a battle between inhuman experts. One side's resistance was relatively short. Otherwise, the entire apartment would have collapsed. Lu Qing stared at Gulu's residence and made a preliminary judgment. When Uncle Cyrus came to fetch his son and family, he was ambushed. With hostages, he might have surrendered quickly. Then who was the culprit? Lu Qing looked around and saw that the place was in chaos. Other than corpses, wandering dogs, scurrying rats, and flying bugs, there wasn't a single living person. With the sporadic gunshots in the distance as a backdrop, it was exceptionally quiet and dead. At this moment, Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He turned and looked behind him. Who's there? A black-haired, black-eyed man walked out from the half-collapsed shop. He was in his 30s and had weathered features. His eyes were resolute, and one could tell he was Chinese. I'm Wang Dong, a special investigator from the military. You must be Lu Qing? The man smiled and took out his identification. Lu Qing had already retracted his interaction with his surroundings. He no longer had the feeling of disturbing heaven and earth. He nodded solemnly. Yes. Are you here to investigate Cyrus's whereabouts? He wasn't afraid of a sneak attack. Boldly taking the identification, he compared it with the information provided by the military. Wang Dong frowned slightly. After we lost contact with Cyrus, I came to Kukhang and started the investigation. I arrived much earlier than you. At that time, there were still residents who hadn't evacuated. After some questioning and follow-up verification, we can basically confirm that Cyrus and his family were captured by the high priest of the Isis temple. They are currently being held in the temple and are waiting to be dealt with. The temple of Isis? High priest? Lu Qing returned the identification to him. Wang Dong pondered for a moment and said, when Cyrus sought protection, he revealed many secrets, including the religious conflict in Nile. The Isis sect is loyal to the pharaoh, and the pharaoh seems to want to restore the ancient era of gods. In short, the high priest of the Isis sect in the local temple represents the will of the pharaoh to a certain extent. He isn't weak either, close to physical invulnerability. Previously, General Satha of the Brotherhood tried to kill him, but for some reason he failed. Other than him, there are 3 to 4 other inhuman mighty ones in the temple. All right. Do you have any more detailed information about the temple and the high priest? Asked Lu Qing. Quite a lot, including satellite images of the temple, visitors' self-drawn drawings, municipal construction plans. Wang Dong took out a bunch of things from his military backpack. With these, Lu Qing had a basic understanding of the temple's situation at night. However, he wasn't in a hurry to take action. Instead, he circled around the building in the dark. As though there was an opening in between his eyebrows, his spirit transformed into an invisible hand that extended to cover a 10-meter radius. Every detail was reflected in the ice mirror in his heart lake. No premonition of danger. The Inhumans are a certain distance away. Lu Qing stopped in his tracks and said to Wang Dong, have you made arrangements for the evacuation? Yes. Wang Dong replied in a deep voice. Then I'll take action. Lu Qing nodded lightly. Be careful. Wang Dong couldn't help but remind him. All right. Lu Qing didn't say much. He turned around, extended his hand, and pressed against a protrusion on the wall. He leaped into the air and landed on the edge of a window on the 3rd floor. With a tug of his shoulder, he exerted precise force and directly unloaded the window, placing it flat silently. Leaping in, there was no one inside. Lu Qing leaned against the door and listened carefully. After sensing carefully for a while, he suddenly opened the door and rushed out. At this moment, there were only 2 guards left in the corridor. They instinctively looked over. Drawing the ancient words in his mind, his eyes were cold and sharp. Lu Qing only took one look at the 2 strong guards, and it was enough to make them break down mentally. Snot and tears flowed down their faces, as though they had encountered a monster from the depths of hell. After the qualitative change of his spirit, the effect of Lu Cheng's simplified army formula had more than doubled. Taking a step forward, He raised both hands and struck out with a karate chop. Luqing knocked the two guards unconscious. He circled the circular corridor and rushed to the opposite side silently. That's the high priest's room. Lu Cheng's plan was to capture the ringleader first. He didn't want to waste time trying to find out where Cirrus and his family were being held. His heartbeat slowed down and his breathing weakened. The surface of his body was covered with coldness, which allowed him to avoid the infrared alarm. There's more than one person in the room. Luqing stopped outside the door. Like a god looking down, he used the ice mirror to reflect the blurry situation inside. In this aspect, there was indeed a qualitative difference between an inhuman and a physical invulnerability expert. Two inhumans, but they are in different small rooms. One of them feels stronger, and there are a few of them with average strength, or even none. They are together with the weaker inhumans. At this point, Luqing understood what was going on. Cirrus and his family were being held in the secret room of the high priest's residence. Just nice, Luqing thought to himself. After pondering over the next few details, he suddenly opened the door and entered. The high priest immediately sensed it and stood up from the recliner. He saw a black shadow approaching him and heard the roar of a strong wind. He swung his arms agilely, one up and one down, one blocking and one attacking. Dim light gathered. He wasn't stingy with this. He tried to create a bigger commotion to attract the other mighty ones in the temple. At this moment, a bone-chilling wind that seemed to have come from the depths of the North Pole blew on him, causing him to shiver involuntarily. As he shivered, his strength weakened and his speed slowed down. Luqing's right fist was already coming down on his forearm. Before entering the school, Luqing had prepared a severe warning. He wanted to use it to attract the north wind from the outside world. Bam! Amidst the low sound of the collision, the high priest, who was caught off guard, was momentarily dazed as though he had been frozen. Luqing wouldn't let this go. His left palm struck out at lightning speed and knocked his opponent unconscious. In a breath's time, the outcome was decided. Ambushers did have a huge advantage. He extended his leg, and the high priest fell silently before lying down again. Without further delay, Luqing found the secret room, broke the lock and entered. "Who is it?" asked a tan, muscular, black-haired, blue-eyed elder weakly. He seemed to have been injected with some kind of drug. Before Luqing could answer, the elder blurted out in surprise after seeing the other party's appearance. "You're Shi's disciple?" "Yes, Mr. Cirrus." Luqing sought confirmation. Feeling the cold wind and the interaction between the other party's body and the outside world, the blue-eyed elder nodded, puzzled and delighted. "I'm Cirrus." After answering, he muttered to himself, "I didn't say he was that strong. Let's leave this place first." Luqing looked around and made a decision. In a building near the military base, Constantine looked at the mummy with a bored expression. "Is your helper not here yet?" "Probably until daybreak," replied the mummy calmly. At this moment, someone came in and whispered a few words to the guard outside. The guard turned around and knocked on the door, inviting the mummy out. After a while, the mummy came back and said to Constantine, "Something happened at the temple. There's a little worm causing trouble. I'm going to deal with it." Constantine shrugged and said, "Come back quickly. Don't let me get bored." Chapter 603. In the Isis Temple, Luqing and the rest had just walked out of the secret chamber, when Cirrus looked around and saw the high priest lying unconscious on the recliner. He didn't say much and walked weakly at the back of the group. When he passed by the lounge chair, he suddenly squatted down and leaned against it. Gathering all his remaining strength, he smashed his elbow into the high priest's neck, breaking his throat and breaking his cervical vertebrae. Without a sound, he went to meet Mother Earth. This turn of events was out of Luqing's expectations. He looked over in shock and blurted out, "Mr. Cirrus?" In order to prevent the high priest from waking up and causing any accidents, he had used the reflector to monitor the surroundings. He didn't expect Cirrus to suddenly attack, and it was too late to stop him. Cirrus supported himself on the armrest and stood up while panting. He revealed a smile and said, "If he's alive, he'll expose us. You don't want to have 2, 3, Or even a few demigods chasing after you, right? Of course. Kukhang definitely doesn't have that many experts. I'm just giving an extreme example. His son and daughter-in-law were extremely frightened. They each covered the mouth of a child to prevent them from screaming uncontrollably. Luqing thought for a few seconds and nodded thoughtfully. He turned around and led Cirrus and his family back the way they came. From the place where the window was removed, he threw them one by one. Special investigator Wang Dong caught them one by one. The entire process was carried out silently and didn't disturb the stray dogs and cats nearby. In the end, Luqing created a vibration and sent a voice transmission to his companions. You guys leave first. I'll take care of the aftermath. We'll meet at the predetermined location. What aftermath? Wang Dong was confused, but his professionalism didn't allow him to delay. He led Cirrus and his family away and disappeared into the night. Luqing turned around and snuck into the high priest's room again. Due to the privacy of the higher-ups, there were only surveillance devices in the secret chamber. This time he used his fists and legs to control his muscles, fascia, and force. He used the friction between them and the air to counteract the sound of his body shattering the tables and chairs, cracking the walls, and burning the floor. If there was an outsider here, he would definitely be horrified. It was as if Luqing was fighting a silent battle with an invisible ghost. Everything was like a silent color film at the beginning of the last century. Such control was extremely demanding, and Luqing didn't have the supernatural ability of sonic wave. If it weren't for the qualitative change in his mind and the improvement in his realm of all-seeing God, he definitely wouldn't have been able to complete such a feat. Even so, he had no choice but to slow down his movements to ensure precision. In the end, he was sweating profusely. After a little looting, he filled a luggage bag with gold and jewels. They all had the unique charm of the Nile, and there was no lack of antiques among them. When he was done, Luqing left the high priest's room with his back bowed and back bent. He circled the circular corridor like a ghost and returned to his original spot. He leaped down from the third floor, which had lost its window. He retracted his chi and blood in midair, adjusted his strength, and landed steadily and silently. Like a civet cat, he blended into the darkness. A few minutes later, the patrolling guards discovered their comrade who had fainted. They then noticed the abnormality in the high priest's residence. Another 15 minutes later, Luqing saw Wang Dong, Cirrus, and a few others in a parking lot in the north of Kukhang. The engine of a modified SUV was still running, and it was ready to leave. Why are you going back? Wang Dong asked in a seemingly casual manner. Thanks to Senior Cirrus's teachings, I've learned a lot. I'm going back to leave some evidence for them. Luqing smiled and sighed. He glanced at Cirrus and replied in Huanatian. Evidence. Wang Dong was half puzzled and half guessing. Are you trying to mislead the possible pursuers? Yes. Let's first assume that there are experts at the temple who are adept at tracking. It's better to be prepared, explained Luqing. Wang Dong nodded thoughtfully. He turned around and opened the door to the driver's seat. Let's talk on the way. At the temple, the mummy rushed to the high priest's room and observed the scene. Aside from his face, his exposed skin was wrapped in yellowish-white bandages. His face was covered with a thick beard that concealed his facial features. An intense battle, but no one heard it. Muttered the mummy softly. He made a judgment. The attacker should have the supernatural ability to block out sound. His standard is slightly higher than the high priest's. The fact that they could fight to such an extent in a surprise attack was enough to show the level of the attacker. At this thought, the mummy turned to the remaining priests. Did you see anything from the surveillance? Yes. A skinny priest asked the supervisor in charge of surveillance to bring in a laptop and replay the surveillance footage. There was footage of Luqing jumping to the third floor and dismantling the window. There was footage of him attacking two guards and knocking them unconscious. There was footage of him returning and collecting a group of loot bags. In these videos, due to Luqing's deliberate evasiveness, his face was never recorded. They could only determine that he was an Asian based on his facial features. Why didn't you discover him on the spot? Asked the mummy in a deep voice. It happened in the blink of an eye. If you don't slow down the video, It's hard to determine if it's an illusion or reality, explained the supervisor in a fluster. More importantly, there were so many cameras and so many images. The temple had never placed much emphasis on the power of technology. He didn't have many subordinates, and it was late at night. How could they discover something that happened in a flash? The mummy glanced at the supervisor coldly. That's your problem. As soon as he finished, he reached out and grabbed the supervisor by the neck, lifting the fat and round man up. No. The supervisor's voice was choked out in his throat, like the cry of a dying rooster. His hands and feet struggled a few times, but they quickly lost their strength. His moist skin quickly weathered and dried up. In less than 30 seconds, he lost all signs of life and turned into a real mummy. Thump. The mummy loosened his grip and let the supervisor fall to the floor. I'll go and catch them, said the mummy in a deep voice. The mummy said in a low voice. Then he muttered in anger and disdain. An inhuman from China. A greedy inhuman. He took out a bandage and wrapped it around his head again and again, leaving only his 2 eyeballs uncovered. At first glance, he was already a real mummy. Even his aura had become dim, faintly discernible, as if he was dead. The aura of life, the taste of life. The mummy opened his arms and embraced nature, muttering cryptically. His surroundings instantly turned dark. In the tiniest places, there seemed to be oil stains shining. There were strange light spots rising in a riot of colors, swaying in the air, each different from the other. It was as if the underworld had descended, causing the priests to lower their noble heads. Found you, said the mummy suddenly. Before he could finish his sentence, his figure had already disappeared from the room. Under the night sky, the heat of the day dissipated. The surrounding yellow sand was quiet. A modified MPV sped along Route 76. Lu Cheng's suggestion for a retreat was that the situation in Dika was chaotic and easy to intercept. Why not go south to Bori Town and head to the port city of Fartuat? To this, Wang Dong and Cirrus both agreed. As the car sped past, the silent desert beside the road suddenly moved, forming a human-shaped sand sculpture. The sand sculpture shook, and the sand on the surface fell off, revealing the mummy with his face covered in bandages and a pair of deep, flickering eyes. He sprinted at full speed and finally caught up with his target. As for the priests, he didn't want them to be a hindrance, thinking that they would slow him down, so he didn't bring them along. Looking at the taillights of the car, the mummy's bandages moved, revealing an undetectable smile. Humph, he said softly, then sank back into the yellow sand. In the MPV, Cirrus couldn't help but praise after hearing what Lu Cheng had done. Not bad. This will make the people of the deity temple think that the opponent isn't strong, so the number of experts they send to chase after us will be limited. I hope so. If the priests had swarmed me, I would have had no choice but to run. Mr. Cirrus, how's your recovery? Asked Lu Cheng with concern. Once I stop injecting for more than an hour, the medicine won't be able to suppress me anymore. Cirrus flexed his arms and smiled happily. I'm halfway recovered. Lu Cheng was about to speak again when he felt a premonition. He turned to look out of the window. The gentle and peaceful yellow sand under the moonlight had turned violent. It was dyed black and was surging towards them grain by grain. No, that's not yellow sand. Those are tiny insects that completely covered the color of the yellow sand. They were densely packed and uncountable, making one's scalp tingle. Ouch! Cirrus's grandson saw this and let out a tragic cry. Lu Cheng made a prompt decision and opened the door forcefully. He jumped out of the car, knelt on one knee, and punched the ground. Bam! Just as his fist hit the ground, rings of scarlet and white flames rippled outwards. With the support of heaven and earth, the power extended. The flames rippled and passed through the car, engulfing the black waves. Pa, 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 pa. Whenever the scarlet and white flames came into contact, the tiny insects would immediately explode. They didn't leave behind any corpses, as though they had returned directly to the underworld. Rings after rings, waves after waves. With Lu Cheng as the center, within a radius of 50 to 60 meters, the black turned into powder. The ground was clean, revealing the yellow sand. After the punch, Lu Cheng visualized and adjusted his organs. He aimed another punch at the opposite side. This time he treated the ground as his opponent and used internal explosion. Internal explosion of the physical invulnerability level. Rumble. The surface of the ground exploded, causing the surroundings to shake. Not far from Lu Cheng, a black figure felt the pressure and uncontrollably crawled out from the yellow sand. A yellowish-white bandage covered his face, making him look demonic and evil. The mummy narrowed his eyes and almost blurted out, "Demigod. A physical invulnerability expert from China." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.